Chapter 448. Hellion Vivian did not know what he was talking about. Her long hair swayed as she fell into a numbness that could not be shaken off. Even her tailbone felt as if it was electrocuted. She only wanted him to go faster and be more ruthless. Don't rush, beautiful things have to be done slowly. Beligaju's voice was getting softer and softer. It was so low that it made people tremble. When it was at its limit, Hellion Vivian's voice was trembling as she asked him to let her go. Compared to the past, the royal family did let her go this time. They only took less than 2 hours to release her. But this was still very beastly. If it was converted to modern time, it would be almost 2 hours. Hellion Vivian supported her slightly sore waist. She was not as tired as before. She did not know if it was because of the medicine or the beast pill, but she felt more refreshed. The mercenary looked at the young lord and finally heaved a sigh of relief. He thought that something had happened to the young lord, which was why she had not come for so long. Now it seemed that everything was going smoothly. The clan meeting will begin in an hour. Hellion Vivian flipped through the ancient scroll in her hand and smiled. Let's talk as we walk? Yes. The mercenary lowered his eyes respectfully and followed Hellion Vivian outside. It was just past noon and the weather was sunny. There was a square house in Mao Air Alley, the 8th largest alley in the capital. In addition to training martial arts and accepting disciples, that residence was used to worship the ancestors of the Hellion clan. Every year at the end of the 8th month or the beginning of the 9th month, a clan meeting would be held. In front of the ancestors, they would evaluate whether or not the successor had the qualifications to take charge of the clan. At this time the house was filled with people. Other than the most eye-catching seats, the rest of the seats were all stewards of the family branches. Look, the old master is here. It was not known which steward said this sentence, but everyone raised their eyes, their hands holding teacups as they watched Hellion Guangyao walk in with a face full of determination. He sat upright on the seat that old Master Hellion used to sit in back then, his eyes looking down at the steward below, his face full of complacency. Su Yan Mo, on the other hand, was the lady who accompanied him. She sat beside him in a dignified manner, looking virtuous and generous. Seeing that the couple had taken their seats, the stewards who were drinking tea below all stopped talking and looked up at Hellion Guangyao. Hellion Guangyao glanced at the empty seat and said coldly, "Why? Didn't anyone inform the selected representatives of the clan meeting? The clan meeting is an important event for the Hellion family. Can't they be late?" The steward sitting on Hellion Guangyao's right side opened his mouth and spoke in a low voice, "Master, that is the seat of the eldest Mississippi. There is news from the palace saying that she will be arriving later. However, please rest assured that there is still a jaw stick's worth of time before the headquarters. After a jaw stick's worth of time, the eldest miss will certainly arrive." Hellion Guangyao's face was covered with a layer of frost after hearing the steward's words. Su Yan Mo, on the other hand, seemed to be quite understanding. This girl Wei Wei has been unruly since she was young. Now that she is the princess consort, it is inevitable that her arrogance will grow. We can wait, but Steward Li, look at how many stewards are below and how many of them are here. Even though Wei Wei is the princess consort, she shouldn't make so many people wait. However, right at this moment, just as she finished speaking, the wooden door was pushed open with a bang. Before the person entered, the voice was heard and the fragrance lingered in the air. "The clan meeting hasn't started yet. Shouldn't be considered waiting." Hearing this, everyone raised their heads and looked at the door. They saw a slender and cold figure walking towards them slowly. She was dressed in an ivory long robe. Her long black chestnut hair was spread out behind her back. She was beautiful and alluring. Her face was not painted with a trace of rouge, but it made people think of the word fairy. Who else could it be but Hellion Wei Wei? Who else could it be? She was not alone. There were 2 mercenaries walking side by side beside her. Both of them were from the hidden army. On their black clothes there were pistols for action. They looked ordinary, but each of them had extraordinary skills. However, no one knew their identity. Seeing Hellion Vivian, Su Yan Mo could not control the hatred in her eyes. However, she knew better than anyone that now was not the time to tear this little bastard apart. Once the clan meeting was over, this little bastard would naturally be treated as a stray dog and be chased out. There was already a history of being chased out of the family, And if this happened again, this little bastard would be completely removed from the Hellion family. Su Yanemo held the cup of tea in her hand and took a big sip. She told herself to be patient and not be impatient. She just had to sit and watch how Hellion Guangyao would slap that little bastard in the face. Hellion Guangyao didn't have any expression on his face. He only glanced at Hellion Weiwei in a neither light nor heavy manner. Using his identity as the head of the family, he swept his gaze over the surroundings. Since everyone is present, then let's begin. However, other than the experienced stewards, the rest of the younger generation who came from all over did not know Hellion Vivian and were whispering to each other. Who is this woman? She's so beautiful. I don't know, but judging from her aura, she seems to have a high status in the family. She has a high status, but Madame Su doesn't like her? Although I didn't hear what Madame Su said just now, it seems like the two of them are not on good terms. Let's ask her properly when she comes later. This is the first time I've seen such a beautiful woman. I wonder if she's married. Do you really not know? She's the Hellion Vivian we met during the test last time. One of them finally pointed out Hellion Vivian's identity. The younger generation who came from the outer city were all shocked. Their eyes were filled with disbelief as they looked at Hellion Vivian intensely. How is this possible? You're not in the capital, so you don't know. Hellion Vivian's face has recovered long ago. Not only that, she was chosen as the princess consort by the royal family. Also, the profound heaven that you guys wanted to visit when you first came was also owned by her. The more the crowd listened, the more interesting their expressions became. They remembered that when they first came, Hellion Weiwei was only 10 years old. Not to mention that she was ugly, she didn't have the slightest bit of martial qi. Her temperament was also not likable. She was extremely rude. In the end, when they watched her take the test, she got the worst. She was simply the disgrace of the Hellion family. They respected her as the granddaughter of Old Master Hellion, but they also looked down on her from the bottom of their hearts. The stewards of the family also directly disqualified her from participating in the clan meeting due to various interests. So what if she was the heir of the most orthodox bloodline? She was just a piece of trash. There was no way she could make a name for herself. But now... Chapter 449. The crowd raised their heads and stared at the extraordinary face. They could not help but feel a little dazed. The Hellion Vivian in front of them was no longer the good-for-nothing she used to be. There seemed to be something about her that had never been there before. She exuded a cool handsomeness with just her gestures. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Hellion Vivian strolled towards the main seat. Her imposing manner was overwhelming. Her voice was not loud, but it was loud enough for everyone to hear. This seems to be my seat. Hellion Guangyao heard her words and did not react for a moment. When he understood what she meant, the crowd below was in an uproar. The discussion of the stewards was like a tidal wave. Rumors were spreading everywhere. Hellion Guangyao's face darkened. His pair of shrewd and vicious eyes stared straight at Hellion Vivian. This is not the place for you to create trouble. Go back to your seat. Don't break the rules set by our ancestors before the congregation even starts. Even if you are the third princess consort now, you should know what is etiquette, justice, integrity, and shame. Of course I know what is etiquette, justice, integrity, and shame. Hellion Vivian said slowly in a calm voice. Perhaps Mr. Guangyao has forgotten. I am the true heir of the Hellion bloodline, and you are just a son-in-law who married into the family. When I was not qualified to participate in the congregation in the past, I did not care who took this seat. Now that I have the qualifications, shouldn't you also give me the position that belongs to me? When Hellion Guangyao heard the word son-in-law, anger rushed to his head. He slammed the wooden table heavily. Hellion Vivian, I will say it again. Even if you are the princess consort, you cannot break the rules set by our ancestors. If you can't stand it, you can withdraw from the congregation now. The rules set by our ancestors? Hellion Weiwei smiled and called out, Manager Zhang, I'll have to trouble you to tell Mr. Guangyao what the rules of the Hellion family are. The steward who was called out could not sit still. Cold sweat broke out on his forehead, but he did not speak. Hellion Vivian glanced at him with a faint smile. You don't want to say? It doesn't matter. I have a family tree here. It clearly states that if the head of the family passes away, someone with the bloodline of the family will preside over the meeting and take the seat of honor. Regardless of age, as long as they are qualified, they can take the seat. It's impossible for the stewards present not to know about this, right? No one spoke, and the scene was extremely quiet. Hellion Vivian didn't seem to notice the suppressed anger on Hellion Guangyao's face. Her pretty eyebrows raised slightly. "Mr. Guangyao, please give up your seat." Hellion Guangyao's entire body tensed up due to his anger. His eyes were as sharp as a knife as they shot towards Hellion Vivian. Hellion Vivian chuckled. "Why? Does Mr. Guangyao not wish to abide by my Hellion family's rules?" At this moment, Hellion Guangyao finally noticed that from the moment she entered the door, she intentionally removed his surname. The reason for that was obvious. Suyen Mo was sitting at the side. Her eyes moved and her tone sounded like a peacemaker. Did Wei Wei forget because she was young back then? In the family, if the successor is not qualified and is not of age, the elder has the right to take charge of the family on behalf of the successor. Madame Su also said that it is to take charge of the family on behalf of the successor, not to take over the seat. Hellion Wei Wei glanced at the surroundings, with a smile that wasn't a smile. Her gaze fell on Hellion Guangyao. "Mr. Guangyao, I'm still here, yet you're sitting in my seat. You're taking my family property for granted. Aren't you a bit too shameless?" Hellion Guangyao clenched his fists. "You!" Hellion Vivian sneered. "Give up your seat." The discussion below was still going on and everyone was looking at Hellion Guangyao. Hellion Guangyao forcibly suppressed the anger in his chest and said coldly, "I, Hellion Guangyao, have been working hard for the prosperity of the Hellion family for so many years. Even if I don't contribute, I should at least contribute. I didn't expect to be misunderstood like this. Forget it, once the clan meeting is over, everyone will know what's right and what's wrong." Hellion Vivian ignored his hypocritical remarks and looked at him with a smile. No matter how much this person said, he still had to give up his seat for her. Hellion Guangyao did have to give up his seat, but he believed that this little bastard would only be able to bask in glory for half an hour. After a while it was time to vote. How did she get that seat? He would let her get it back on her own. Hellion Guangyao stood up and strode to the seat at the side. That seat was not low, but compared to Hellion Vivian's seat, it was a few levels lower. Hellion Vivian did not sit down immediately. Instead, she glanced at Suyen Mo who was sitting next to the seat, and her gaze turned colder. That seat was supposed to be her mother's. In her memory, her mother was dressed in military attire and sat next to her grandfather, managing such a large family. What right did this woman have to sit there? Hellion Vivian smiled, but the smile did not reach her eyes. She looked at Suyen Mo and did not speak to her. Instead, she called out again, "Steward Zhang." The steward did not understand why the princess was thinking about him today. He responded awkwardly, "Huh. How can a concubine who has nothing to do with my family sit in the second-in-command seat at the clan meeting?" Hellion Vivian said coldly, "I haven't participated in the clan meeting for 7 years. Is the family so unprincipled?" Not only Steward Zhang but the other stewards also had to think twice when they heard this. Suyen Mo sitting in that seat was already extremely against the rules. Now that she was picked out by Hellion Vivian, it was inevitable. Steward Zhang was not as hesitant as when he was facing Hellion Guangyao. He reached out his hand and said, "Madam, why don't you change your seat?" Apart from that one time when she was reflecting on herself on the streets, Suyen Mo had never suffered such a huge loss in front of so many people like today. However, under such circumstances, it was not up to her to say no. She had prepared for the entire day for this clan meeting. Even the clothes were specially chosen. She wanted to use this opportunity to win back her reputation. Now that she was being forced to change her seat, Suyen Mo's chest was about to explode. However, she maintained a smile on her face. "I was careless. I only thought that in these few years, I had already regarded myself as a member of the Hellion family, but I couldn't avoid being ostracized." Just like what Guangyao said, we'll see how it goes after the clan meeting. As she spoke, she stood up. She wanted to sit next to Hellion Guangyao, but realized that there was no seat left. She could only stand awkwardly at the side, her eyes filled with venom. She wanted to see how that little bastard would be so arrogant when the hidden army appeared later. Chapter 450. Hellion Vivian did not even look at Su Yenmo's eyes. Her long robe fluttered in the wind as she crossed her long legs and sat on the main seat. She looked down at the stewards below and took a deep breath. For 7 years, she did not even have the right to step into the clan meeting. 7 years later, she was sitting in this seat again, the seat that originally belonged to her grandfather. Hellion Vivian narrowed her eyes, as if this was the only way she could calm down the surging emotions in her blood. Calm down. This was nothing. The show had just begun. Hellion Weiwei curled her lips into a smile and signaled for the congregation to begin. The stewards looked at each other, and one of the stewards with more seniority spoke in an old and deep voice. Since this clan meeting is different from the previous ones, we shall not waste any more time. As early as half a month ago, the notice of the clan meeting was sent out. Since the death of the old master, although the Hellion clan has not declined, it has not been as glorious as before. An acting patriarch is not enough to unite everyone. We need to choose a real patriarch. Now there are 10 clan leader candidates present at the clan meeting. After today, one of them will become the clan leader. I believe all the stewards already have a candidate in mind. For the sake of fairness, let's raise our hands to vote now. The steward said that there were 10 candidates. However, those who truly understood the intricacies of this matter knew that in reality, it was just a competition between Hellion Guangyao and Hellion Vivian, who had the orthodox bloodline. For 7 years, Hellion Guangyao, the son-in-law, had controlled all the power in the Hellion clan. Hellion Weiwei used to be a good-for-nothing, so Hellion Guangyao naturally replaced her with Li Taoxing. That's right, the Hellion clan was built single-handedly by the Old Master. If it was not for the Old Master's lifetime of military exploits, the Hellion clan would not be so glorious. However, Hellion Guangyao had been in power for so many years, how could he let go so easily? Now, Hellion Vivian wanted to take back the authority of the clan. Not only did she need to ask Hellion Guangyao for his permission, she also needed to ask the stewards behind Hellion Guangyao if they were willing. From the very beginning, they had already disobeyed Old Master Hellion's will and followed Hellion Guangyao. After so many years they had reaped a lot of benefits. If Hellion Vivian took over, not only would they benefit, but Hellion Vivian would also dig up all the ungrateful deeds they had done in the past. Therefore, from a certain perspective, it would not be easy for Hellion Vivian to take back what belonged to her. Many people could not see the result of Hellion Vivian. They looked at each other and shook their heads. Hellion Vivian calmly sipped the tea in her hand, as if no matter what happened around her, it had nothing to do with her. The first 8 candidates did not get a single vote. Hellion Guangyao watched as the stewards acted according to his plan. Being driven to the side, a shrewd light appeared in the corner of his eyes. That's it. He wanted her to take a good look and see just who would inherit the Hellion bloodline. Next, Hellion Vivian. When Steward Zhang said Hellion Vivian's name, there was another round of whispers outside the hall. Neither servile nor overbearing Weiwei stood up. Her long robe fluttered in the wind. Her sleeves fluttered in the wind. Just as I said before, 7 years ago, I was young and didn't know any better. I was used by others and I was also poisoned. My behavior and style inevitably made everyone disappointed. Now that I have recovered, I will certainly make the entire divine continent respect my Hellion bloodline. No one can provoke us. These words stunned the people below. One must know that this idea was once Old Master Hellion's greatest wish when he was alive. Apart from Old Master Hellion, no one dared to boast like this. Was it because they were related by blood? The crowd lowered their eyes and pondered. However, Hellion Guangyao laughed without a trace of warmth. He said sarcastically, Weiwei, some things can't be solved just by talking. You have never been involved in the family's affairs since you were young. How much do you know about the family's affairs? A good patriarch can't solve problems just by being hot-blooded. At this point, Hellion Guangyao did not give Hellion Vivian a chance to speak. He turned to Steward Zhang and said, all right, let's continue with the voting. Steward Zhang nodded and exchanged glances with Hellion Guangyao. He raised his hand and gestured for the stewards to continue. Su Yenmo felt relieved when she saw this. She took a sip of tea and thought to herself, that little bastard probably doesn't know that they had bribed the stewards from the very beginning. Other than Steward Zhang, who was their confidant, The other stewards had also taken advantage of them. They were waiting for the start of the clan meeting to oust Hellion Vivian. Although there was an old man among them whom they did not manage to deal with. However, there was only one person. With 9 votes against 1, it was obvious who would win. Su Yanmo put down the teacup and looked at Hellion Wei Wei as if she was waiting for a good show. Come, everyone, let's vote together. After Steward Zhang finished speaking, he saw that Old Master Zhong was the only one who raised his hand. He did not take this round seriously and said with a smile, "Since no one is voting, then let's whoosh." A series of rustling sounds suddenly interrupted his voice. Steward Zhang choked in disbelief. He looked at the stewards who raised their hands and subconsciously looked at Hellion Guangyao. Hellion Guangyao was stunned. His eyes widened in an instant as if he suddenly thought of something. His face was full of shock, followed by unconcealable anger. Su Yanmo could not hold it in anymore. How could this be? Why did they choose Hellion Vivian? You all of you. Hellion Guangyao did not say anything. He was so angry that his chest heaved up and down, as if he was trying to control his emotions. One of the stewards smiled and said, "Brother Guangyao, don't be like this. In this day and age, of course, we will side with whoever gives us more money." Hellion Guangyao heard this and his face darkened. However, he knew that it was useless to be angry at this time. He turned his head and said to Hellion Vivian, "I have underestimated your methods. Mr. Guangyao seems to have forgotten that you were the one who used your methods first. I only saw that Mr. Guangyao's methods were not bad, so I added some money on top of that." Hellion Wei Wei casually sat in the main seat, her fingertips propping up the side of her face. She raised her eyebrows and glanced at Hellion Guangyao. "Manager Zhang is your confidant, so I didn't touch him. As for the rest, everyone followed their own hearts and made the choice. 9-1, I think you all planned to do this at the beginning. Unfortunately, it's me who gets 9, and you who gets 1. Chapter 451. Following Hellion Vivian's last sentence, Hellion Guangyao's usually arrogant face showed unprecedented anxiety and uneasiness. Su Yanmo was anxious as well. She walked towards Hellion Guangyao, as if asking him what they should do now. Hellion Vivian looked at the 2 people standing in front of her, and recalled how she was kicked out of the family in the past. She was forced to leave, forced to lose everything she had, and the pain and regret of her mother before her death. All of this made Hellion Vivian's eyes turn cold like never before. "Steward Zhang, are you mute? Don't you know how to announce the result?" When Hellion Vivian was unhappy, her imposing manner was comparable to Beligaju. Steward Zhang was so scared that his whole body trembled. He said in a trembling voice, "I announce." "Wait a minute." Hellion Guangyao interrupted him, his side profile cold. "I didn't want to announce this matter so soon. Before the old master passed away, he said that if anyone could win the support of the hidden army, 1 vote would be equivalent to 10 votes. Do all the stewards still remember this?" The stewards did not say anything because they had all sucked in a deep breath when they heard the words, 3 hidden soldiers. Everyone present knew that it had been 10 years since the hidden army had last seen them. For 10 years, they had tried every method to find out the whereabouts of the hidden army, but to no avail. Even if they occasionally heard news about them, it was of no use at all. The hidden army only followed the old master from the beginning to the end. "Guangyao, you mention the hidden army now. Do you know where they are?" One of the stewards could not hold back his excitement and stood up as well. Hellion Guangyao tilted his chin up and smiled arrogantly. "Of course, to be honest, I have been exchanging letters with the current leader of the hidden army for a few days now. He will be attending the clan meeting this time as well. He will be sitting in the audience below." "Really?" The other stewards also started talking at once. Hellion Guangyao laughed again. "I have no reason to lie to all of you. In order for the Hellion bloodline to develop better, the most important thing is to find the hidden army. Therefore, during this period of time, I have been working hard to find the hidden army. Unfortunately, others have taken advantage of this loophole." Everyone was well aware of who this bystander was referring to. The stewards looked at Hellion Vivian hesitantly and lowered their voices. "Princess Consort, according to what Old Master said before he died, the hidden army is indeed more important. The position of the clan leader of the Zhonghui, why don't you? The hidden army isn't here yet. Isn't it a little too soon for Manager Su to ask me to give up so soon? Hellion Vivian laughed. She crossed her left leg and leaned back, unable to restrain her playboy aura. She said calmly, let's talk about it after Hellion Guangyao summons the hidden army. Su Yanemo laughed coldly. This little bastard really wouldn't give up until she was in front of the grave. Hellion Guangyao did not waste any more time. He shouted towards the crowd, General Qi, are you there? Yes. Amidst the crowd, Qi Yan, who was dressed in pure black, slowly walked towards them. Perhaps it was because he was too handsome. As soon as he revealed his face, all of the women present immediately turned their gazes toward him, looking at his calm and composed posture, with his long sleeves fluttering in the wind. Only these words seemed to appear in their minds. A peerless young master. This was how it should be. Among the stewards there were also some older ones. Once they saw Qi Yan's appearance they seemed to recall something. You are the emperor's. Qi, young master Qi. The young master of the Qi family only had one bloodline. He did not receive the emperor's grace and did not use up the emperor's power. They thought that the Qi family had hidden away in the city, but they did not expect that he would become the leader of the hidden army. The steward was in a daze, but then he remembered that this was how it should be. Back then, Old Master saved Qi Yan's life. This kid was probably repaying his kindness. With such a person as the general of the hidden army, wouldn't the hidden army today be even more powerful than it was in the past? When the stewards thought of this, they could not help but feel excited. However, no one noticed that Hellion Vivian had maintained her lazy demeanor from the beginning to the end. There was no change in her expression. Behind Qi Yan were two other generals. When one of them saw Hellion Vivian, he subconsciously wanted to greet her. The other one quickly held his hand and scolded softly, De Xiong. Qi Yan did not need to turn around to know what had happened. It must be that De Xiong, who was not in the right mind, got hot-headed when he saw Hellion Vivian. He seemed to be helpless. His long eyebrows furrowed, but he did not show any other expression. Hellion Guangyao quickly greeted them with a smile. He was also puzzled as to why 3 people came at once. The letter clearly said that General Qi Yan alone was enough. However, Hellion Guangyao was very happy to see the other members of the hidden army. Now he was the rightful successor. Even if that little bastard wanted to snatch it from him, he would not be able to beat him. When he thought of this, Hellion Guangyao's expression could not help but be proud. He looked at Hellion Vivian with a gaze that said, hurry up and give up your seat for me. His voice was cold as he said, now you should be convinced of your loss. Convinced? Hellion Vivian switched her legs and smiled. I always forgot to mention that I have prepared a big gift for you and Madame Su in this clan meeting. Now that I have taken out one of them, it should be just right. As she said this, she glanced at the mercenary beside her. The mercenary quickly passed a stack of envelopes to her. Hellion Weiwei calmly took it and lazily flipped through it a few times. Her slender fingertips raised as she smiled and said, this handwriting is actually pretty good. It's just that the content is too earnest and well-intentioned. It makes people who read it only feel that the writer is too hypocritical and want to casually reply with 1 or 2 sentences. Haha, come, let Mr. Guangyao have a look at these letters. After Hellion Vivian said this, the mercenary passed the letters to Hellion Guangyao. Hellion Guangyao wanted to throw them away, but he realized that the large handwriting on the envelopes was unbelievably familiar. This is obviously his handwriting. What the hell? Hellion Guangyao snatched the letters and roughly flipped through them a few times. His dark eyes shook violently. This is a letter that he wrote to the hidden army. How did it appear in her hands? Hellion Guangyao suddenly raised his head and stared at Hellion Vivian. Hellion Weiwei merely lifted her thin lips and did not even look at him. Instead, she hooked her finger at Qi Yan, who was standing in the distance. Her voice was flat and her posture was languid and calm. Come here. Chapter 452. Yes. Qi Yan's voice was light, but there was a hint of playfulness in it as he walked towards Hellion Vivian. Then he opened his mouth again. His eyes were deep as he said in a low voice, young master. After hearing the last two words, Helian Guangyao seemed to have suddenly understood something. His hands gripped the stack of letters tightly as he looked towards Qi Yan. Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. The people in the distance could not hear clearly what was said and had yet to react to what was happening. They were stunned and thought to themselves, wasn't the hidden army summoned by Helian Guangyao? Why did they go to the princess consort's side? What's going on? I'm not sure, could there be any changes? Voices of discussion rang out one after another. Helian Guangyao's body shook as he did not dare to think about it from his perspective. However, De Xiong could not hold it in any longer. At this time, when he saw Helian Vivian calling Qi Yan over, he did not say anything and knelt on the ground on one knee. With a whoosh, the hidden army hidden in the crowd moved as well. The scene was so grand that everyone was shocked. Helian Vivian smiled faintly as she stood up. Helian Guangyao, what makes you think that my hidden army will listen to your command, just because of those letters? De Xiong, tell him why you are here this time. Of course, to assist the young master. The voice was De Xiong's. This shout made everyone burst into an uproar. What did he just call the princess consort? Young master? No way. Could it be that the hidden army has already recognized her as their master? That's impossible, the hidden army has not appeared for a long time. The princess consort couldn't have found them, right? Why is it impossible? Look at those people. Everyone looked back and saw 18 people dressed in black robes, including the mercenaries from before, standing behind Helian Wei one after another. They all had different postures and were not very handsome, but they emitted a kind of aura that could crush everyone. Really, they really recognized her as their master? The stewards were all stunned and mumbled to themselves as if they could not believe it. The teacups in their hands fell to the ground with a clang. However, Su Yenemo did not believe it. It was impossible for the hidden army to have recognized a master. 2 days ago, they were still communicating through letters. How could they recognize that little bastard as their master? It was a lie. This was all a lie. Old master, hurry up and tell them who the hidden army belongs to. Su Yenemo reached out and tugged at Helian Guangyao's sleeve, her voice urgent and sharp. She, who wholeheartedly wanted Helian Vivian to suffer the consequences of her own actions, did not notice the paleness on Helian Guangyao's face. After reading the letter in his hand, Su Yenemo finally understood. Her eyes were filled with astonishment as she muttered, "She was the one who kept replying to our letters? She had already gotten hold of the hidden army before we even contacted them? How is this possible? How is this possible? But these letters, these words. Master, say something, master. What the hell is going on?" The buzzing sound in his ears made Helian Guangyao's entire body stiffen. He only felt a burst of dizziness. The air in his chest couldn't catch up. His hands trembled and he almost lost his footing. "Old master!" Su Yenemo cried out anxiously and quickly supported his body with her hands. Only then did Helian Guangyao not lose his composure. He reached out and pressed his head, as if waiting for the dizziness to pass. Seeing him like this, Su Yenemo couldn't hold it in anymore. She looked up at Helian Vivian and reprimanded her. "Vivian, no matter how immature you are, you should understand that he is your father. I know that all these years you don't see eye to eye with me. That's why you went against your father. I don't care how you treat me, why do you have to make your father angry? If a person doesn't have filial piety, it doesn't matter how capable they are." Su Yenmo's face was full of righteousness, as if she was going to bear all the grievances and didn't care what the outcome was. Helian Vivian was a little bastard who could even lay her hands on her own father. Such a person, no matter how capable she was still trash. Her words naturally caused a commotion. After all, this was ancient times. In ancient times, filial piety was the most important thing. Was Su Yenemo planning to create public opinion to stop her from ascending? Helian Vivian's eyes showed a cold smile. Her elegant face curved into an arc. Filial piety? That depends on whether the other party is worth it for me to fulfill that filial piety. As she spoke, she pointed at Helian Guangyao. 7 years ago, my mother was seriously injured and bedridden. What did this trash do? Not only did he cheat on my mother, he even married a mistress. Since you are preaching to me now, I will tell you in return. My mother was a righteous person. What did she do wrong? If he didn't want to stay in the Hellion family, he could have packed up and left. Unfortunately, he was greedy to the point where he couldn't even be considered human. In order to get the Hellion family, he actually poisoned my mother. No matter if it was my grandfather or my mother, Hellion Guangyao was indebted to them for saving his life. I think at that time, my grandfather definitely didn't expect that he would save a heartless thief. Hellion Guangyao was so angry by Hellion Vivian's words that he couldn't even speak. When the stewards found out about this shocking secret, they were all shocked and looked in the direction of Hellion Guangyao and Su Yanmo. Su Yanmo was not afraid. At that time, only she and Hellion Guangyao were there. Who could prove that they killed someone? Wei, you can't slander your father just to find an excuse for yourself. Su Yanmo also had her own thoughts. No matter what, in this kind of situation she had to put up with it on the surface. The smart Hellion Vivian naturally understood that she wanted to offend. She laughed softly and walked over. She turned her face sideways and whispered in Su Yanmo's ear, "Madam Su, why are you in such a hurry to come to a conclusion? My second gift hasn't arrived yet." As soon as she finished speaking, a petite and beautiful figure rushed in from the outside and hugged Hellion Guangyao's waist. She looked up at him pitifully. There were still traces of tears on her small face. "Guangyao, are you okay?" Hellion Guangyao did not expect Lan Lian to come in, and subconsciously wanted to push her away. After all, this was a public place with so many people, such intimate actions were really indecent. However, when he saw the worry in her eyes, his heart ached. He reached out and patted her back, letting out a long sigh. This small face could always evoke his gentleness. Who is she? Su Yanmo's voice rang in his ears. It was so sharp that it almost revealed all the viciousness. "Guangyao, tell me clearly, who is she?" She did not expect that at this time, the person in her husband's arms was actually another woman. Chapter 453. Hellion Guangyao obviously did not want to explain his private matters in front of so many people. He replied impatiently, "What are you yelling for? We'll talk about it when we get back." Go back? Su Yanmo felt like her head was about to explode, especially when that woman had no intention of letting go. She, who had always been arrogant, could not tolerate this kind of thing. She took a step forward and tried to pry Lan Lian's hand away. Lan Lian shivered as if she was very scared. She curled her shoulders and hid in Hellion Guangyao's arms. She said softly, "Guangyao, did I do something wrong?" "Good girl, you didn't do anything wrong." After Hellion Guangyao comforted Lan Lian, he raised his eyes and looked at Su Yanmo. "Are you done? Haven't you embarrassed yourself enough today?" He used to be worried that Su Yanmo would find out that he had an affair. What was there to be afraid of now? That old man in the Su family was dying and he would soon take over the Su family. As for this woman, if she was sensible, he would ensure that she had food and clothes. If she was not, she would be left to her own devices. Am I the one who is embarrassing, or are you the one who is embarrassing? Look at how old she is. You actually. The more Su Yanmo spoke, the thinner the air became. She reached out and touched her forehead. The youthful beauty of a young girl was obviously not something she had. The chill that came from her forehead made her lose her usual demeanor completely. She pulled Lan Lian's hair and said, "You little bitch." With Lan Lian's skills, it would have been easy for her to dodge, but she did not. Instead, she followed Su Yanmo's momentum and fell heavily to the ground. Her small face was pale and colorless. Her fingers covered her lower abdomen as she kept calling out, "Guangyao, Guangyao, it hurts." Hellion Guangyao's heart ached. He carried Lan Lian in his arms and kicked Su Yanmo viciously. Su Yanmo did not expect him to hit her. When the pain came, blood was already flowing from the corner of her mouth. She clenched her fists and gritted her teeth. "We were married for 7 years. How could you do this to me? I didn't want to do this either." Hellion Guangyao did not intend to kick so hard, but seeing that Lan Lian was wronged, he could not help but lose his strength. "Lian Er is pregnant, but you are acting like a shrew, hitting people. If there's anything, let's talk about it when we get home." He had already lost the right to inherit the Hellion family, so he couldn't lose face as well. The moment Su Yanmo heard the word pregnant, her chest turned even colder, and the chill went straight to her head. You two have been together for a long time. Was it because you kept saying that you were busy? You're actually looking for this little bitch, right? Helian Guangyao, do you still have any humanity? I don't want to waste my breath with you. Helian Guangyao saw that she wouldn't listen no matter what he said. So he simply waved his sleeves and wanted to leave. All the stewards at the clan meeting were dazzled by this turn of events. They looked at Su Yanmo with pity in their eyes. In fact, not many people in the capital did not know that Helian Guangyao had a mistress outside. He was the only one who kept it a secret, and Su Yanmo still foolishly believed him. Little did she know that the Su family had long played Helian Guangyao in the palm of their hand. Helian Guangyao. Su Yanmo slammed her left hand on the ground and shouted at the top of her lungs, "Don't you dare leave! Have you forgotten that without the Helian bloodline, you are nothing in the future? The Su family has 100 ways to drive you into a corner." Hearing this, the pity in everyone's eyes became stronger. De Xiong still did not understand what was going on. He scratched his head and called out to Helian Vivian, "Young master? What's this?" Helian Vivian smiled faintly and gave him a handful of sunflower seeds. She held a cup of tea in her hand and said simply, "Watch the show." De Xiong did not understand what was there to watch, but this guy was the same as Little Seven. Having something to eat was a good thing. Hence, he elatedly nudged the mercenaries beside him and whispered, "Quick, give me a seat." Qi Yan was the most cautious person among them, so much so that when he saw the most courageous soldiers of the hidden army squatting in a row at the side and discussing how the plot would progress while eating sunflower seeds, he really wanted to pretend that he did not know this group of people. The scene was clearly not supposed to be like this. They had always been tall and mighty in the hearts of the people. But today there was an unreliable young master. Helian Vivian saw Qi Yan frowning at her and thought that he was dissatisfied that she did not share the sunflower seeds with him. She opened her eyes wide and innocently stretched out her hand. "This is the last handful." "No thank you," Qi Yan said coldly, but the corner of his mouth twitched. He sighed sadly in his heart. It was indeed different from before. Helian Guangyao naturally did not feel good being surrounded like this. He originally did not want to turn around, but who would have thought that Lan Lian, who was in his arms, would speak softly and weakly, "Guangyao, you should stop. If because of me you lose everything, I will feel guilty." Seeing that Helian Guangyao had turned around, Su Yanmo sneered and took a deep breath. Only then did the stifling feeling in her chest dissipate slightly. However, her fingers were trembling uncontrollably. Relying on her self-control, she forced her voice to slow down. "Guangyao, think carefully. Once you step out of this door, you know what you will face. Are you threatening me?" Helian Guangyao laughed coldly. "All these years, you have been using your Su family to pressure me. Don't forget, if it was not for me, your Su family would not have reached this point. Now that your father is old, let me give you a piece of advice. Be quiet and everyone will live well." Hearing this, Su Yanmo's body shook and her voice was hoarse. "What do you mean?" As she spoke, she rushed towards Helian Guangyao and shook his arm with all her strength. "Tell me clearly, what do you mean?" Guangyao, my head hurts." Lan Lian was shaken until her face turned pale. She reached out and held her forehead, looking like she was in pain. Seeing this, Helian Guangyao flung Su Yanmo away fiercely, his face full of mockery. "Do you still need me to say it clearly? Don't you know what the Su family is like? Your father's position as prime minister has long been taken away. What is there to be arrogant about?" Helian Guangyao. Su Yanmo lay on the ground, her fingers clenched so hard that blood flowed out, but she did not notice. Her chest was heaving up and down. She was so angry that she could not say a word. Helian Vivian was done watching the show. She stood up and patted her robe, casually instructing the few people behind her, "Take the melon seeds and belts, don't throw them everywhere." Chapter 454. De Xiong had yet to react. Helian Vivian had already walked to Su Yanmo's side. There was a hint of laziness in her mischievous smile. "Madam Su, do you still like the present I gave you?" Su Yanmo raised her head with a murderous look in her eyes. "It's you. You're the one who arranged all of this." Helian Wei did not deny it, but the smile at the corner of her mouth deepened. with unprecedented coldness. Su Yan Mo, do you think that as long as no one knows about it, the evil deeds you have done are not evil? It's not that the time has yet to come. You and that scumbag joined hands to steal my Hellion family's property. You even shamelessly complained about your grievances everywhere, slandering my mother's reputation, causing me to lose my martial chi. Today, I'll let you have a taste of what it feels like to have your man stolen by a mistress and your property stolen by your husband. Su Yan Mo reached out and grabbed the collar of her shirt, as if that was the only way she could breathe. In the end, she could not resist anymore. A mouthful of blood spurted out just like that. However, Wei Wei acted as if she didn't even see this scene. She stood up straight and leisurely brushed away the non-existent dust on her clothes. Su Yan Mo's face was ashen as she leaned back. Her fingers stretched forward and struggled for a while before hitting her own chest. Her lips were black as she fell into the dust. Hellion Vivian knew that this was a sign of her illness, but it had nothing to do with her. A life for a life, a debt must be repaid. Su Yan Mo should have paid the price long ago. Guang Guang. She seemed to want to call Hellion Guangyao's name. However, Hellion Guangyao did not have her in his eyes. He only wanted to hold Lan Lian in his arms so that she would not make a move and hurt his heart. Su Yan Mo looked at the disgusted expression on his face. Her remaining hope was gone. Her eyes were empty as she looked at the foggy sky. It was too similar, almost exactly the same as before. It was just that the person who was held in his arms last time was her. But now it was someone else. At the thought of this, Su Yan Mo's last breath was caught in her throat. She could not utter another word. Like a person who was about to drown, she curled up in pain and stopped breathing. When Hellion Guangyao saw Su Yan Mo in that state, he couldn't help but panic. In his panic, he wanted to escape even more quickly. He said to Lan Lian in a disorderly manner, "She died of anger. It has nothing to do with anyone. Lianair, let's go now." Leave? Lan Lian didn't say anything. Instead, it was Hellion Vivian who laughed from behind him. "If you want to leave, you need to make sure that the person you want to take away is willing to go with you." What was the meaning of this? Hellion Guangyao abruptly turned his head around. Today's repeated blows had stimulated him to the point that his eyes were red. Unexpectedly, Lan Lian, who was originally in his arms, pushed him away with a cold expression. Then she stood up straight and walked towards Hellion Vivian. Seeing this, Hellion Guangyao's face was extremely pale. He found it difficult to speak. "Lan Lian, it was His Highness who arranged for me to come into contact with you. Otherwise, do you think I would take a fancy to you based on your age and conduct?" Lan Lian sneered. "Abandoning your wife and child, even a beast is better than you." The muscles on Hellion Guangyao's face trembled violently due to anger. "I thought that I treated you well, but you look at me like this. That's why I said you're despicable." Hellion Vivian smiled gently. She handsomely put her arm on Lan Lian's shoulder and said viciously, "Starting from my mother, no matter how well the family treated you, you didn't feel that it was enough and even wanted to bite the master. Outside, other people didn't like to talk to you, but you were still despicable and tried to please them every day. I heard that in the beginning, you were the one who pestered Lan Lian and refused to let go. It really suits your despicable style. If you weren't so despicable, these plans would have been difficult to implement." Hellion Guangyao only felt a buzzing sound in his head. This made him want to strangle Hellion Vivian on the spot. However, he knew that he would only embarrass himself no matter what he did now. He didn't forget how many people were present. If he continued to stay, he was afraid that he would become the joke of the entire capital. He hadn't lost yet, at least he still had the Su family. That's right, he still had the Su family. Hellion Guangyao calmed his soaring anger, and quickly walked out of the hall of the congregation. Hellion Vivian looked at Hellion Guangyao, who fled in panic. The corners of her mouth slowly curled up. Lan Lian didn't understand. She whispered, "Why didn't the princess just kill him directly? Don't forget, the Su family still has Prime Minister Su." Hellion Vivian smiled faintly. "I don't have any evidence of what Prime Minister Su did in the past. Killing him would only cause trouble for His Highness for no reason. Now that Hellion Guangyao has set his sights on the Su family and angered Su Yan Mo to death, do you think Prime Minister Su will let him go?" "De Xiong." That Su Yanmo was angered to death by young master Hellion Vivian ignored the loyal dog's honest gaze. She coughed softly and continued. Hellion Guangyao underestimated Prime Minister Su, that old fox. His return will not be as smooth as he imagined. This kind of infighting will definitely kill one of them. As she spoke, Hellion Weiwei turned her head to the side and whispered to the person behind her. Send General Guangyao off and tell Prime Minister Su about Su Yanmo's death. Let him know that he has a good son-in-law. Lan Lian listened to Hellion Vivian's instructions. She had mixed feelings. Until today she finally saw how powerful this person was. Even compared to His Highness, she was not inferior at all. If such a person wanted to mess with her that day, it would be a piece of cake. But she had left herself behind. Lan Lian was shocked. When she looked at Hellion Vivian again, there was suddenly something in her eyes that had never been there before. If it was this person, she would be willing to bow down to her. Half an hour later, when the news of Su Yanmo's death reached Prime Minister Su's ears, he almost fainted from anger. He was already ill from kneeling outside the palace in the rain for an entire night. Now that he was so agitated, his pair of old hands could not even hold the teacup properly. Coupled with Hellion Guangyao's shameless actions, he felt like he had invited a wolf into the house. Cold sweat rushed to his head. With a wave of his hand, he swept all the medicinal tools on the wooden table onto the floor. In the midst of the chaos, the butler reached out to support him and shouted, "Call the doctor! Quickly call the doctor! Old master, old master! Nothing must happen to you, old master!" At this moment, in the inner courtyard of the palace, Beligaju, who had finished reading the memorials, was unbuttoning his outer robe with one hand. He turned his head to the side and listened to the subordinate's report. The corner of his mouth curved into a playful smile. Chapter 455. You should let me say it. The Princess Consort is really smart. Only she could come up with such a plan. Eunuch's son was also listening at the side, smiling as he poured a cup of tea for Beligaju. Beligaju raised his good-looking eyebrows and said calmly, "She is smart, but not ruthless enough." Eunuch's son was speechless. He thought to himself that this was not ruthless enough. That person from the Su family would not be able to survive this autumn. Something bad would definitely happen to him. However, he really wanted to know what his master would do if it was him. What if it was His Highness? What would he do? Beligaju casually threw away the outer garment in his hand and loosened his collar. He said casually, "Send Su Yanmo's corpse directly to Prime Minister Su." Eunuch's son was speechless. Prime Minister Su would have straightened his legs. In terms of infuriating people, the Princess Consort was indeed not as shameless as his master. Beligaju did not seem to notice his gaze. He turned sideways and draped the outer garment over his shoulders. He stood tall and straight, looking radiant. "Prepare the carriage, we are leaving the palace." Leaving the palace? Eunuch's son quickly followed, not knowing why His Highness suddenly wanted to leave the palace. When Beligaju walked outside, he stopped in his tracks. His gaze swept across the flowers in the imperial garden indifferently. He seemed to have paused in his tracks. After a while, he turned his head and asked Eunuch's son, "Where are the roses in the palace?" Eunuch's son could not keep up with His Highness's pace today. "What roses?" Little seventh prince popped out from the side with a goldfish in his mouth. His words were a little muffled, but his face was fierce. "Third brother, are you looking for roses?" "Yes." Beligaju glanced at him. "You know?" Little seventh prince touched his bald head. "Third sister-in-law gave you some last time. Don't you still have a lot of them in the palace?" "Those won't do." Beligaju rejected him calmly without explaining why. Little seventh prince knew that his third brother treasured those roses like they were precious, but roses in other places. "I owe my little ancestor." At this moment, Eunuch's son seemed to have regained his senses. He grabbed the little one and said, "How can you eat fish like this? This was a child. Your Highness, why don't you scold the seventh Highness? If he eats it raw, what will happen to his body?" The little seventh prince ignored Eunuch's son's obstruction and continued to hold the beautiful goldfish in his mouth. Eunuch's son immediately felt mentally and physically exhausted. until Beligaju looked at the little one and said, "Open your mouth." Only then did little seventh prince spit out the goldfish into Eunuch Sun's hand. He was very reluctant to part with it. Eunuch Sun quickly let go of the goldfish that was still alive in his hand, in case the little seventh prince couldn't help but take it back. How did the chefs in the imperial kitchen serve the seventh prince? How did they starve him to this extent? The chefs felt so wrong that they wanted to vomit blood. They howled in their hearts. It was obviously the seventh prince who ate whatever he saw. What did it have to do with them? In fact, it really had nothing to do with the imperial kitchen. A long time ago, Beligaju knew that his little brother had a huge appetite. He specifically asked the imperial kitchen to watch over him 24 hours a day and prepare 12 meals a day, in case the little one got hungry. If one had to compare the seventh prince's appetite, other people's afternoon tea was a piece of cake and a few candied fruits. His little seventh prince ate 10 meat buns and a plate of side dishes. The cakes and whatnot were only used to grind his teeth originally. They thought that with such preparations, the little seventh prince would definitely not eat the goldfish in the pond. The Grand Emperor had asked several times why the number of goldfish he raised was always decreasing. Each time, they were speechless and could only continuously add more food for the little seventh prince. Add more food. Unexpectedly, he didn't even let go of the last goldfish in the pond. Eunuch Sun heaved a long sigh. The little one didn't feel discouraged even though he didn't have food to eat. He followed behind Beligaju. His small head could only reach Beligaju's thigh. He had a strong and dignified aura, as if he would bite anyone who came close. He was very domineering and ferocious. With his presence, ordinary things wouldn't dare to come close. Eunuch Sun was relieved and quietly went to prepare the carriage for the two masters. This time it wasn't only His Highness who was going out of the palace. There must be more food in the carriage. Yes, 20 meat buns would be enough. He didn't know if the imperial kitchen could spare the time to make it. "Third brother, why do you insist on roses?" The little one tugged at Beligaju's clothes and tried his best to keep up with him. Beligaju answered casually, "For your third sister-in-law." He didn't know what roses meant, but he saw that she often flipped through the Chasing a Wife handbook. Roses should be the best choice. When the little seventh prince heard that it was for Hellion Vivian, his little face became serious. "Third brother, I think you should give third sister-in-law something more practical. For example, the pair of red-crowned cranes in Imperial Grandfather's courtyard. They must be delicious." Eunuch Sun was speechless. Why did he hear that the seventh prince was thinking about the retired emperor's favorite red-crowned cranes when he came back? "Little master, if you continue to eat like this, the retired emperor will definitely not be able to take it and throw you back to the White Academy again." Red-crowned cranes? Beligaju stood still, as if he was thinking. Eunuch Sun's eyes suddenly widened. "No, it can't be, no." Beligaju continued. "Third sister-in-law found the things I gave her strange." Eunuch Sun was relieved. Fortunately, the little seventh prince's tiger eyes lit up. What did third brother give third sister-in-law? He wanted it too. Color. Just 2 words made Eunuch Sun and the little one petrified in the wind. The old and the little one looked at each other. Eunuch Sun sighed and held the little seventh prince's hand. "Little master, in the future, this servant will not say that you are strange when you give people things. In the future, if you see a girl you like, you should give her food." Giving food was better than giving a necklace. That was the rhythm of being rejected at any moment. The little seventh prince put on a handsome face and said, "Don't worry, Eunuch Sun, compared to third brother, I'm still normal. The imperial kitchen chef who came to deliver the meat buns. How are you normal? Go and ask which family's child eats by the basket." Beligaju ignored the noise behind him and turned to the west side of the imperial garden, only to see a few dozen roses. Eunuch Sun originally wanted to call the gardener who took care of these roses, so that he could pick flowers for His Highness. Before he could open his mouth, he saw a white robe fluttering in front of him, followed by a sweet fragrance. Beligaju, who was standing in the middle of the flowers, had a big bouquet of blooming roses in his hand. He held it with one hand, his long robe fluttering. His figure was as noble as jade, so handsome that people couldn't take their eyes off him. Chapter 456. At this moment, Hellion Vivian was still in the house. She did not know that the royal family was planning to give her roses. Her eyes scanned the surroundings, cold and capable. The stewards were also astute. When they saw that Hellion Guangyao's power was gone, they stood up one by one and shouted that the Hellion family had a successor. This was the prosperity of the family. Hellion Vivian did not buy their words. She understood that these people could be used but could not be trusted. She sat on the main seat with a faint smile. Everyone knows that I have never participated in the clan meeting, so I don't know much about the affairs of the family. Before Hellion Vivian could finish, someone started to express his loyalty. Eldest miss, don't worry. With us here, everything will be fine. Yes, we are here. Eldest miss, you don't have to worry. Another person spoke. Hellion Vivian glanced at the two stewards. Her smile did not diminish. If that is the case, then I would like to ask all of you to explain the properties that you are in charge of now. Hearing Hellion Vivian's words, most of the stewards' smiles were a little stiff. They did not expect that an inexperienced child would take them down so easily the moment she took over. What was the difference between asking them to hand over their properties and revealing all of their secrets? The stewards looked at each other, wishing that they did not respond to Hellion Vivian's words just now. However, Hellion Vivian seemed to have prepared everything long ago. She instructed the people beside her, distribute the paper and pens to the stewards, so that they do not miss anything. She meant that there was no way to fool this issue. The stewards gritted their teeth and regretted for no reason. If they had known this would happen, they would not have chosen such a demon god for the sake of money. This Hellion Vivian looked lazy and harmless, but in fact they did not know what was wrong with her. She always made them feel uneasy. But even so, they would never agree to anything that would affect their interests. Eldest miss. A steward stood up. He had a big belly and a fierce look on his face. If you restrict us like this, how are we going to do anything in the future? Hellion Vivian smiled, but the smile did not reach her eyes. Limit. I just want to know what you guys are doing. What restrictions are there? Aren't you restricting us by making us write down our properties? The steward spoke passionately. The people below also began to show signs of wanting to stir up trouble. Hellion Vivian calmly put down the teacup in her hand. Big Bear, Old Eagle, let Steward Wang understand my rules. No one understood the meaning of this sentence. A cracking sound could be heard. There were two people standing behind Steward Wang. Each of them was holding a long pipe that was as tall as a person. It looked like a weapon. Just looking at it was a bit scary. Yes, it was a simple word. Manager Wang was kicked more than a meter away by one of them. The stewards who wanted to resist all froze and looked at Hellion Vivian with different thoughts. Hellion Weiwei was all smiles as she said, unless I'm forced into a corner, otherwise, I'm a person who really doesn't like to fight and kill. Therefore, I hope that everyone can be more reasonable. The stewards paused and returned to their original seats. How could they forget that she had already been recognized as the master of the hidden army? In the future, whatever they wanted to do, they would have to consider whether they had the life to bear the consequences. For some reason at that moment, the people saw the shadow of the old man who used the dragon-headed walking stick to give orders in Hellion Vivian. An inexplicable sense of oppression and guilt made their foreheads covered with a layer of sweat. After all, there were not many people who were worthy of old Master Hellian's nurturing. At this moment they finally understood the meaning of the hidden army standing here. Hellion Vivian was showing her power. She was telling them to restrain themselves and I'll spare their lives. If they don't, I'll take their lives. The back of the confidant who followed Hellion Guangyao was drenched in cold sweat. He trembled as he wrote down the properties under his jurisdiction on the piece of paper. Hellion Vivian looked at the paper that was collected and tapped her fingers twice in satisfaction. She was still polite and said, "Very good. I believe that with everyone's cooperation, the Hellion family will develop better. It's all thanks to eldest young Mrs. Wisdom." The stewards forced a smile on their faces despite their bitterness. Hellion Vivian glanced at De Xiong and the rest and said in a calm voice, "You can put away your guns now." Gotcha. Another sound rang out. The stewards were alarmed, but they were not completely convinced. Even if Hellion Vivian became the clan leader, She did not have any reputation in the imperial court. A newly appointed clan leader without any scholarly achievements must show some results within a month to prove her ability to everyone. Otherwise, she would still be stripped of her position as the clan leader. If she went overboard, there would naturally be people who would deal with her. They were not in a hurry. They just had to behave during this period of time and sit back and watch the show. There would be a day when Hellion Vivian would turn around and say good things about them. After all, she was still young and impulsive. Even if she had the hidden army's protection, she might not be able to go far. These people are not convinced by you. Qi Yan looked at the stewards who left respectfully and his eyes lit up. Hellion Wei carelessly propped up the side of her face with one hand and flipped through the rules of the family tree with the other. She smiled mischievously. They think that I don't have scholarly honors and won't last more than a month. It seems that I have to think of a way to become an official first. Qi Yan's deep eyes swept across her face and finally landed on her neck. Hellion Vivian thought that there was another mark on her neck, and subconsciously reached out to cover it. He heard Scarlet Flame say, "You've really changed." Hellion Vivian felt that this was not a safe topic. Qi Yan was very smart and very loyal to Old Master Hellion. If he found out that she was not the real Hellion Vivian, the result would be very difficult to control. People change. Hellion Vivian wanted to change the topic. Qi Yan casually dropped a bomb. "Is this why you have forgotten that you once liked me?" "Who? Liked who?" Hellion Vivian was stunned. Didn't the Hellion Vivian in the past marry only Murong Changfeng? It seems that you really don't remember. Qi Yan took a sip of tea and said slowly, "However, before you found the hidden army, I saved you twice. The first time was during the Flower Appreciation Festival. You were almost molested." Hearing these words, Hellion Wei's soul vaguely shook violently for a moment. She seemed to have a certain image in her mind. She stood under the flowery countenance tree, looking at the back of a person leaving. She only felt that even her heart was aching. Chapter 457. In order to cover up the pain, she wanted to marry Murong Changfeng as soon as possible. Gradually, as time passed, she chose to forget the man who made her feel a sharp pain every time she thought of him. Just like how she chose to forget the truth about her biological mother's death. Her memories became clearer and clearer, to the point that she didn't see the figure walking towards her. Instead, many people turned their heads in the direction of the commotion, their eyes filled with shock. Bailey Jiaju merely had an indifferent expression on his face as he held the rose in his hand. His tall and slender figure stood straight as his gaze fell upon the body of the man standing opposite of Wei. His deep eyes deepened without warning. Hellion Vivian's hands and feet were a little stiff, as if she couldn't control her own body. Her fingers tightened slightly to suppress the dizziness. Vivian. When Hellion Vivian thought of those things, she always felt a sense of detachment. If it wasn't for the familiar voice calling her in time, she would have floated away. She stabilized that feeling, regained control of her own body, and tilted her head to look to the left. The red roses in His Highness' arms had an indescribable flirtatiousness, and it was extremely beautiful. But why did he carry the flowers here? Also, he seemed a little unhappy. Before Hellion Wei could open her mouth, a certain someone had already put his arm around her waist and put the flowers in her hand with a smile that was not a smile. Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows again. His Highness was the most unpredictable when he was like this. She had to say something. "For me. Yes. The roses are very pretty. I like them very much." In any case, she had to appease him first. Bailey Jiaju glanced at her, tilted his body, and used his slender fingers to tuck her hair behind her ear. His voice was deep and wicked as he said, "Then think carefully about how to repay me later." Hellion Vivian's hands that were fiddling with the roses were a little stiff, and the tips of her ears were red. Seeing her like this, the coldness in Beligaju's eyes dissipated a little. "The congregation should be over. When are you leaving? Are you here to pick me up?" Hellion Vivian was so happy that a smile appeared on her face. "We can leave now. After we return to the palace, I have something to discuss with Imperial Grandfather." As she spoke, Hellion Vivian turned her head and looked at Qi Yan. "Thank you, General Qi, for your help. I hope General Qi will forget what I said in the past that offended you. I was young back then, so it was inevitable that my imagination would run wild. Scarlet Flame looked at her, his eyes as deep as water as he slowly said, I don't think it's offensive. What does this mean? How was she supposed to answer? Hellion Weiwei subconsciously looked toward Bailey Jiaju. His side profile was so handsome that it could steal other people's breaths at any time. The smile on his face became even wider. Hellion Vivian didn't think that it was happiness. A person like His Highness wouldn't smile like that when he was truly happy. As expected, Beligaju hugged her tighter, but his eyes were still looking at Scarlet Flame. He said with a smile, don't think so much in the future so that others won't take it seriously. It'll be troublesome to deal with it. Don't you agree, young Master Qi? Little Seventh Prince listened at the side and thought to himself, Third Brother's poisonous tongue seems to have become more powerful. I must be obedient in the future, or else he will definitely teach me a lesson. As expected, Scarlet Flame's eyes froze. He didn't say anything but looked at Beligaju with his deep black eyes, neither servile nor overbearing. Hellion Vivian inexplicably felt the smell of gunpowder. Look at this, then look at that. Beligaju didn't give her a chance to think it through. He said in a low voice, didn't you have something to discuss with Imperial Grandfather? Go back early, he needs to rest later. Okay. Hellion Vivian's EQ was low to begin with, and the fact that her soul was unstable just now had a big impact on her. She felt that she needed to eat a piece of osmanthus cake to digest it, so she asked, which carriage did you come in? Beligaju raised his eyebrows. He didn't understand why she would change the topic to this. My carriage. Oh, that's good. Your carriage is big, so I have a lot of boxes of snacks. Little Seventh Prince and I will be able to eat later. Hellion Vivian said what was on her mind. The corner of Scarlet Flame's mouth twitched. Was this the result of hearing about this matter? However, Bailey Jiaju was very satisfied with his own praised dullness in certain aspects. He laughed in a low voice and said, those boxes of yours, I've asked people to help you fill them with refreshments and preserved fruits. There's new tea in the carriage, you can drink some in a while. Okay. Hellion Vivian replied with a smile, fully enjoying the benefits of having a sugar daddy. Little Seventh Prince silently mourned for Scarlet Flame, then followed his third brother and third sister-in-law away. When Beligaju hugged Hellion Vivian, she didn't know why, but she couldn't help but look back at Scarlet Flame, who was standing behind her. The person who was known as the jade-like young master didn't change his posture, but his head was hanging down, faintly revealing a sense of loneliness. What? You don't want to leave? Beligaju slowly clenched his other hand. He smiled, but a layer of black fog was brewing in his eyes. Hellion Vivian shook off that strange feeling, and her eyes sparkled. I want to leave. Then don't look back. Bailey Jiaju would never tell her how panicked he felt when he saw the way she looked at Qi Yan when he walked in just now. That's right. It was panic. He really couldn't imagine it. If there was a day when his prey stopped looking at him and looked at someone else, what would he do? Perhaps he would personally break her arms and legs, so that she couldn't go anywhere. Or perhaps he would kill everyone. In short, he would do anything to prevent her from leaving, even if it meant becoming a demon. Waves of clouds surged in from the west. Hellion Vivian didn't understand why the sky suddenly turned dark, but she found that the hands holding her were exceptionally cold. Without thinking, she directly put them to her lips, blew a breath and raised her head. Next time you go out, wear more clothes. The temperature difference is so big now. How do these people serve you? They don't even know to let you wear a coat. A warm feeling spread from the tip of his finger to the depths of his heart, driving away the darkness in his eyes. Before Beligaju realized it, the corners of his mouth had already curled up. I know. Why are you so long-winded? You're the same as Eunuch Sunday. Wait a minute. Hellion Vivian felt that at this time, she had to say some sweet words, and immediately flipped through her wife-chasing manual. Then she smiled very gently. Even if I'm long-winded, I'm only long-winded to you. That's right. The domineering CEOs in novels would usually use this method to completely conquer the person who belonged to them. Little Seventh Prince. He really couldn't bear to look at it. It was really hard for third brother to find someone like his third sister-in-law. Chapter 458. Beligaju did not find it difficult at all. He calmly dealt with Hellion Vivian's various thoughts. In order not to ruin the fun of chasing after his wife, he was even very cooperative. He reached out and patted Hellion Vivian's head as he replied softly, Hellion Vivian felt that she had won completely this time. At the very least, she was very successful in pacifying him. Sitting in the carriage, she took the initiative to tell him that she had confessed to Qi Yan before. She was slightly troubled. How should I face him in the future? Don't tell me you don't know? After Bailey Jiaju finished listening to her words, he slowly asked a question in return. Hellion Vivian crossed her long legs and ate the osmanthus cake in her mouth. Know what? People from the Qi family don't seem to like women very much. Beligaju said vaguely. Hellion Vivian immediately showed an I understand expression. You mean that Qi Yan is a homosexual? It is indeed possible. I don't think he is very close to other women. He clearly has a lot of power, but he doesn't even have a servant by his side. Little Seventh Prince's teeth clenched as he ate the cake. His third brother had already started to accuse Qi Yan of being a homosexual in order to stop third sister-in-law from having any feelings for him. Wasn't this method a little too shameless? Thinking of this, the little one turned his head and glanced at his third brother faintly. Beligaju drank his tea without a change in expression, allowing Hellion Vivian to misunderstand his meaning. From a certain point of view, the royal family was right. Qi Yan did not like to get close to women. There were very few who could make him look at them differently. But the way he spoke, so you don't have to worry about how to face him in the future. Just keep a distance and don't mention the past and make it awkward for both of you. Hellion Vivian nodded as she listened. She yawned lazily and said, if there's nothing important in the future, I won't mobilize him. I don't know how much debt I owe him in the past. Fortunately, he's gay. As long as they don't touch, there won't be any development. Beligaju let Hellion Vivian lean on his body, full of thoughts. The corner of his mouth seemed to curl up. He was simply evil to the bone. Little Seventh Prince swallowed the 3 pastries in one gulp. He puffed up his cheeks and thought, Qi Yan is really pitiful. The woman he likes thinks he's gay or something. Sigh, however, of all people, he had to provoke third sister-in-law. Third brother's digging skills were well known throughout the country. One touch and there would be nothing left of him. In the end, Scarlet Flame still couldn't figure out how he had lost. However, Yuan Ming, who was in the Xuanhuan space, had a pair of eyes that were filled with worry that had never appeared before. Woman, what happened just now? No matter how little White and I called you, you didn't respond. We almost broke the contract between us. Hellion Vivian closed her eyes. Her voice was much calmer than before. It's the previous Hellion Vivian. She seems to have feelings for Scarlet Flame and wants to come back and replace me. It's a bit strange. Yuan Ming rubbed his chin and said, logically speaking, you shouldn't be considered a true possession. Possession means that when the person is still alive, your soul goes to fight for her body. However, I can feel that this body has already lost its vitality before you arrived. In other words, it's a body without a soul. Why did the previous Hellion Vivian come back? Hellion Vivian's eyes darkened. But she really wants to come back. The continuous nightmares and her reaction just now all pointed to this fact. At this time, Little White, who had been silent for a long time, spoke up. Could it be an undead? Undead. Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows. What the hell was that? Yuan Ming also narrowed his eyes. Normal people can't become undead. Don't forget, Hellion Vivian isn't a normal person. She's the reincarnation of the Phoenix Girl. Little White's tone was cold. She has the ability of the Exorcist tribe. Yuan Ming pursed his lips into a straight line. Suddenly, he laughed evilly. That's why I don't like the Exorcist tribe. They're like cockroaches that can't be killed. Little White didn't comment. Yuan Ming's eyes darkened. Even if it's an undead, with Hellion Vivian's courage, it's impossible for her to be invaded so easily. Someone is looking for trouble. Yuan Ming. Hellion Vivian spoke up lazily. What do you think is the possibility that my incident and the incident with the school's resentment were caused by the same person? Yuan Ming laughed evilly. 70%. I think it's 90%. Wei Wei laughed. It's just a pity that that person is too smart. And there are also 4 great elders blocking in front. I also can't see through the clouds. It seems that we still need to first move the 4 great elders aside. Only then can we see that person's true self. Right now, the people on this side of the Hellion family are still not convinced by me. I need to first make some achievements, only then can I truly take back the family property. After I've finished my own business, I'll be free to deal with him. Yuan Ming raised his eyebrows. You've decided to make a move? The other party doesn't want me to stay. Hellion Vivian used her thoughts to communicate with them while glancing at Beligaju beside her. She continued, and I have a reason to stay. Yuan Ming noticed her gaze and reminded her coldly. Be careful that you can't control your heart and soul in the end. He's worth it. These 3 words were enough to explain everything. Hellion Vivian didn't dwell on this issue for long. She tilted her head and pondered. There was only a month's time. What should she do in order to make a name for herself in such a short time? Unless she was transferred outside of the capital. In the modern era, she was in the arms industry, but she still had to deal with people in the political world. Those who were truly high-ranking officials wouldn't stay in the capital after they entered politics. Instead, they would go to other places to do business. The way of being an official, whether it was in the ancient era or the modern era, was generally the same. How about she also tried transferring outside? But she wasn't a child, and she wasn't a man either. It seemed that she still had to talk to Imperial Grandfather and ask him to give her an identity that could be transferred outside of the capital. Thinking of this, she first told Beligaju about this idea. Beligaju laughed softly. Since you're transferring outside, then you definitely need a military advisor. And I originally wanted Qi Yan to go with me, but in the end, Hellion Vivian sighed. She didn't expect that at this juncture, she would lose a general. Beligaju's hand that was holding the teacup tightened. Then he leaned over and pinched her chin. You mean to say that you want to abandon this prince and leave the palace by yourself? No. Hellion Vivian bit her tongue and smiled very sincerely. Beligaju's eyebrows jumped. He didn't pursue the truth of this sentence. He only kissed her lips and said, You can. Chapter 459. Hire me as your military advisor. Beligaju continued in a low and magnetic voice. Hellion Vivian's eyes lit up. It would be great if His Highness could follow her. He must be more experienced than her in the bureaucracy. However, will the palace be all right without you? Hellion Vivian was worried about the unstable situation in the imperial court. Beligaju swirled the teacup in his hand. When have you seen me staying in the palace all day long? Grandfather is in charge of the capital. It will be beneficial for me to move out. Beneficial? Hellion Vivian did not know that there would be benefits for Beligaju here. Beligaju said faintly, I'm going to be the regent in the future. I need to do something to be persuasive. It's difficult to move some people's roots in the capital. It's easier to move them back from the outside. Hellion Vivian knew who Beligaju was referring to without needing to point it out. It made sense when she thought about it. The branches of the 4 influential families were too big. One move would affect the whole family. The roots in the capital were too deep. It would be better to move them back from the outside. It might be effective. Hellion Vivian's only concern was gone when she thought about it. Both of them were efficient. They went straight to see the Emperor Emeritus as soon as they returned to the palace. The Emperor Emeritus pondered for a while and said with a smile, I'm glad that both of you can think of this. Sure, you're right. But it depends on the location. The south is too far away. First of all, the bureaucracy there is too deep. You won't be able to get in. Second of all, it won't be convenient for both of you to move around if you have urgent matters. Everyone says that the poorer a place is, the easier it is to become famous. Listen to me and go to Fuping. Fuping? Hebei? It's not far from the capital. It's surrounded by mountains and has great scenery. Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows. She was not sure if it was the place she knew. The retired emperor stroked his beard and said, That's the place. Wei Juror. Don't underestimate this small Fuping county. The more remote a place is, the more landlords there are. There are many people who think that the emperor is far away and do immoral things. Being in the imperial city, this emperor has to consider everything. There are some things this emperor can't do for the common people, but this emperor can rest assured in the hands of the two of you. Some people, for the sake of their family's interests, plundered the common people's wealth. Not only did they make the common people suffer unspeakably, they deceived their superiors and deceived their subordinates, doing all kinds of things that only animals would do. This time you two have caught a good example for this emperor. Don't worry, when the time comes, no matter how big the root system behind this emperor will make a move against them. Yes. Hellion Vivian smiled and saluted. She raised her hand and placed it on the side of her head. The retired emperor looked at her actions in confusion. He didn't understand what she meant. Then he laughed out loud. This silly girl. Hellion Vivian admired this old man more and more. He did too many things against his will, but even when he couldn't control himself, he still thought about the country and the world. Such a superior person deserved to be supported by the people. A prince raised by such an old man wouldn't be too bad. His Highness's methods were a little cruel and shameless, so he didn't seem to be friendly to the common people. However, he was a good person deep down. Hellion Vivian looked back and smiled at Beligaju. Beligaju was a little confused. After they left the palace, Hellion Vivian told him what she thought just now. Beligaju listened to her and pulled her into his arms. He didn't expect his little one to have such a strong sense of justice. Don't change the topic. Tell me first, how are you going to thank me tonight? His warm breath brushed against the back of her ear. Before Hellion Vivian could react, he had already carried her in his arms and walked into the bedroom. The whole night of torment was extremely fierce. Hellion Vivian didn't know how she had offended him. She only remembered that she had begged for mercy several times and called his name countless times. He didn't let her go until the middle of the night. He patted her back with his left hand and warned her in a low voice, "If I hear you confess to anyone in the future, I will lock you up. Do you understand?" Hellion Vivian weakly lay in his arms. Wasn't this matter already over? It seemed that she had underestimated someone's jealousy. Hellion Vivian thought about it and a faint smile appeared on her lips. Only smiling and not saying anything? Beligaju pinched her chin. That godlike face was handsome and devilish. Looking at it closely, it made people feel that nothing in the world could compare to the smile on his lips. Hellion Vivian reached out and hugged his thin and strong waist. She raised her small face and teased, "This young master, you look so handsome when you are jealous." Jealous? Why would I be jealous? Beligaju laughed and pulled her back. It's just that what you did was wrong. You need to be educated. Hellion Vivian nodded. I need to be educated. I will only confess to you in the future. I won't care about anyone else. That's more like it. Beligaju snorted coldly. Hellion Vivian, Your Highness, does your family know that you are so arrogant? This time when we go to Fuping we will first get your face back. Beligaju's voice was faint and sounded very serious. It's good to have a dark complexion. Why did you have to be so fair? Hellion Vivian. Was it her fault that she was born beautiful? You only know how to attract bees and butterflies. Beligaju hugged her with one hand and put the other hand behind his head. He leisurely closed his eyes. Hellion Vivian was lying on top of him. She was already very sleepy. She would do whatever he said. As a domineering president, she should not be bothered by trifles. Woman, don't sleep yet. Yuan Ming called out to her from the fantasy space. Hellion Vivian was too lazy to move. What's wrong? I discovered something. When you are by the third prince's side, your soul is much more stable. Yuan Ming smiled with a hint of wickedness. It seems that the third prince is really unusual. Hellion Vivian yawned and said, This is the power of love. Yuan Ming. Little White. Yuan Ming was a demon. As a demon, it knew very well the reason behind this. From its point of view, Beligaju definitely had a secret that even it couldn't see through. If it was an ordinary person, it was impossible for them to stand in the middle of human and demon thoughts so beautifully without being affected by the demonic nature. Logically speaking, Beligaju should have fallen into the demonic path in an instant outside the palace today. However, it was obvious that he had controlled himself and even suppressed his ruthlessness without leaving a trace. If he hadn't noticed Beligaju's faintly glowing eyes, even he wouldn't have noticed that something was wrong with him. However, those eyes were clearly the precursor to the demonic transformation. Perhaps it would be good to leave the palace for a while. The aura of resentment here was too strong. Whether it was for Hellion Vivian or Beligaju, it would affect them. Chapter 460. The next day, Hellion Vivian and Beligaju left secretly. It was only 7 days and they disguised their identities, so they did not attract anyone's attention. At this time, the stewards of the Hellion family gathered 3 or 4 people and went to the elder together, full of righteous indignation. If she continues to be so unreasonable, we don't need to do anything anymore. In my opinion, she is just a girl who doesn't know anything, and she still wants to interfere with our business. If she interferes and loses the benefits of the past, who is going to take the responsibility? Elder, the years of filial piety and layers of relationships have been messed up because of that girl's interference. You have to stand up and take care of it. That elder was wearing a pure white robe. It was obvious that he was already very old. His hair was all white, but his eyes were somewhat poisonous. However, this poisonous intent was concealed very well by him, so much so that he even looked like a graceful immortal. He took a sip of tea, as if he did not put Hellion Wei Wei in his eyes. She's just a young and inexperienced little girl. She's just a little smarter and has some tricks up her sleeves. Why are you so anxious to see her like this? Don't forget, she does not have any achievements. After half a month, she will naturally return to her original state. The most important thing for you now is to take care of your business and earn what you can. As for the rest, she can't interfere even if she wants to. The situation in the capital is very complicated, and she is just a princess consort with no real power. She can't do anything even if she wants to, understand? The stewards responded with a yes and immediately beamed with joy. After listening to the elder's advice, they basically understood everything. She was just the 3rd princess consort. Even if she had the hidden army to protect her, she could not understand them in terms of officialdom. Their current benefits were linked to the various elders. Even if she became the Hellion clan's successor, it was nothing more than an empty shell. It only sounded nice, that's all. A woman wanted to control them. Let's see how badly she would fall when the time came. However, these people did not know that just as they were looking down on Hellion Vivian and her advisor Beligaju had already arrived at the most inconspicuous mountainous county in Hebei province. Perhaps it was because the sky was not completely bright yet, so there were not many people on the streets. Other than a few hawkers who had set up stalls, there were very few people. Hellion Vivian observed her surroundings through the curtains. The only thing she felt was that there was a huge gap between the rich and the poor. If you asked her why she thought so, the answer was simple. Along the way, from the West District to the East District, the houses in the West District were basically made of firewood and yellow soil. As for the East District, there was a dazzling array of large mansions. The degree of prosperity was comparable to the residence of a rank 1 official in the capital. Looks like the local tyrant here is living a good life. Hellion Vivian's lips curled up. Beligaju's expression hadn't changed from the beginning to the end. Even though he was wearing an inconspicuous shirt, the aura of a superior was still exuding from his body. In this world, there was a kind of person who could wear rough clothes and burlap sacks, but still look noble and elegant. Therefore, the people who were standing in front of the yamen to welcome the new county magistrate did not even take a look at Hellion Wei Wei. When they saw Bailey Jiaju coming down from the carriage, they immediately went up to him with a face full of smiles. You must be Lord Wei. Seeing you in person is better than hearing about you 100 times. I admire you. Hellion Vivian and Beligaju came to Fuping under false names, so Hellion Vivian used her own name as her surname. That person did not know that he had recognized the wrong person and continued. This humble one has been waiting in front of the yamen for a long time. Let me introduce myself. I am the yamen's advisor Zhang. I have been here for more than 10 years. I know every county magistrate and have been promoted quite a bit. I hope to be able to assist Lord Wei well. Helian Wei finally understood what Private Advisor Zhang was trying to say. His words sounded nice, but in reality he was just trying to show her who was boss. However, it was obvious that he had found the wrong person. Advisor Zhang had been holding out his hand for a long time, but the person opposite him did not respond to him. He was starting to lose his cool and began to talk about his influence in this county yamen. Beligaju did not move at all and allowed him to continue. He did not seem to have any intention to respond to that hand, until Advisor Zhang's mouth was dry and his temper was about to erupt. Then he heard the other person speak calmly. His voice was indescribably pleasant and gentle. My surname is not Wei. Did that mean that he had recognized the wrong person? Advisor Zhang was dumbfounded. His chest was heaving up and down. If his surname was not Wei, he should have said so earlier. He had been holding out his hand for almost half the time it took for a stick of incense to burn. His hand was already numb. You are not Lord Wei, then? Advisor Zhang shifted his gaze to Helian Vivian, who was wearing a white gown. There were only two people here. If it was not the one just now, then it must be the one in front of him. However, he was a little too young. He had never seen such a young county magistrate. Helian Vivian was delighted to see His Highness humiliating people. She stood up and smiled. Advisor Zhang has never seen me before. It's normal that you have mistaken me for someone else. Yes. My eyes are sometimes clumsy. Advisor Zhang felt that he was slapping his own face when he had just said that he had heard of him for a long time, and now he had mistaken him for someone else. However, this little black face in front of him was very tender. This kind of person would not amount to much even if he came. Advisor Zhang had been in Fuping for a long time and there were people behind him. It was difficult for him to restrain his arrogance and thoughts. Naturally, he had underestimated Helian Vivian and the rest. The people who came to Fuping County were either people with connections or were here to earn a sum of money before leaving. Or they were people who were not valued by the imperial court and simply arranged for a ninth-ranked official like him to be banished. In Advisor Zhang's opinion, the two people in front of him must be the latter. First of all, he had never heard of any young master in the capital becoming an official in the imperial court. Secondly, they had not received any orders from any family. Judging from their inconspicuous clothes, they did not look like young masters with power or influence. If he was tactful, he would not interfere in their affairs. Everything would be fine. If he was not tactful, he would have to suffer. Helian Vivian did not miss the ruthless look that flashed across Advisor Zhang's face. She turned the silver ring on her ring finger and looked up at Beligaju. The playful look in their eyes was the same. However, the coldness in the eyes of the royal family was stronger than that of Helian Vivian. A mere advisor could ignore the rules. It seemed that there was a lot to be gained in Fuping County. At this moment, they suddenly heard a pitiful cry for help. Help! Help! Helian Vivian turned around and saw two burly men pulling a woman's long hair and dragging her somewhere. Chapter 461. Helian Wei's pair of eyes quickly narrowed. Her voice was low and deep as she shouted, "Stop!" Private Advisor Zhang was still smiling, but when he heard Helian Wei's words, he frowned and said, "Lord Wei, this has nothing to do with us. Let's go in and have a rest. You must be tired from the journey, so we don't have to worry about these trivial matters." Family affairs? Helian Vivian sneered in her heart. Would there be two men dragging a girl around when it came to family affairs? However, she did not show it on her face. She only said indifferently, "Since you have seen it, I have to ask since I have just taken office." The two burly men turned around and looked at Helian Vivian when they heard that someone was stopping them. They sneered, "Who do you think you are? Go away. I'm telling you, I won't let you go if you delay my business." Private Advisor Zhang opened his mouth. It was obvious that he wanted to stop the burly man. Helian Vivian took a step forward and said in a deep voice, "Don't you know that the entrance of the county yamen is right in front of you? How dare you be so arrogant when you are so close to the yamen?" "Yamen?" The two burly men laughed. let alone the Yamen. Even if the emperor came, we wouldn't be afraid. Don't you know that we are from the Yin Manor? This woman signed a contract to sell herself to our master. Now that she has taken the money and is trying to run away, what does it have to do with you if we capture her? If you are smart, get out of my way. Do you think you have the ability to control us? Young man, I can see that you are not a citizen of Fuping County. If you want to live, don't interfere. If you make a scene in the Yamen, you will be the unlucky one. Upon hearing this, Hellion Vivian didn't get angry. Instead, she smiled. She had also figured out what was going on. She looked around, and the few vendors standing on the street didn't dare to step out. They all pretended not to see what was going on, and buried their heads in the tofu pudding in their hands. Private Advisor Zhang looked at the two burly men. Realizing that they did not recognize him, he could not help but feel anxious. He was afraid that they would say something else, so he shouted, "Are you guys still being reasonable? Hurry up and do what you're supposed to do." The two burly men looked at Private Advisor Zhang as if he was an idiot. Here comes another one who doesn't know his place. Acting recklessly? Private Advisor Zhang was infuriated by these two idiots. Since when did the Yin Manor accept these two people? He didn't even recognize him. Do you know who I am? How dare you talk to me like that? Private Advisor Zhang said this partly out of anger and partly as a reminder. He wanted the two burly men to restrain themselves. To his surprise, the two burly men burst into laughter. You may be well dressed, but look at the two people next to you wearing rags. They are obviously poor people. In Fuping County, even the county magistrate has to be polite to the people from the Yin Manor. Who do you think you are? Oh. Hellion Vivian smiled playfully. From what you've said, it sounds like the Yamen is run by the Yin Manor. Of course. The two burly men crossed their arms and raised their heads. Go and find out about the power of the Yin Manor. Private Advisor Zhang and Steward Zhang of the Yin Manor are cousins. Now you know where the Yamen is run by, right? Hellion Vivian's smile deepened at the end of their conversation. I see. Private Advisor Zhang, what do you think we should do about this? Private Advisor Zhang's expression was uglier than a daylily. He looked at the two burly men with disappointment. No matter how stupid the burly men were, they finally realized what had happened. They looked at Private Advisor Zhang with pale lips. You, Private Advisor Zhang, we didn't do it on purpose. Shut up. Private Advisor Zhang cut them off angrily. He did not want them to say anything stupid again. Hellion Vivian's eyes turned cold. Now you should know where the Yamen is run by, right? The two burly men's faces stiffened. They laughed dryly and said, We failed to recognize Private Advisor Zhang. If we knew you were one of us. Who is one of you? Hellion Vivian interrupted them coldly. Private Advisor Zhang stood in the middle and said hesitantly, Lord Wei, it's not our place to interfere in the affairs of the Yin Manor. Private Advisor Zhang, Hellion Vivian said slowly, according to what you're saying, even if someone kills someone in front of the Yamen should not interfere? Then what's the use of the Yamen? Private Advisor Zhang quickly said, No, Lord Wei, that's not what I meant. You heard them. They said that they bought this woman into the Yin Manor. Since she has entered the Yin Manor and signed a contract to sell her body, she is one of the Yin Manor's people. If she runs away, she will be beaten. It's perfectly justified. Upon hearing Private Advisor Zhang's words, the woman felt that she would definitely be dragged into the wolf's den again if she did not speak up for herself. In a panic, she tugged at Hellion Wei's sleeve and begged, Young master, I beg of you, please save me, please save me. I didn't sign a contract to sell myself to them. I'm the daughter of the head of the household. They dragged me here to force me to accompany their master. I don't want to. I don't want to no matter how much money they give me. I beg you, save me. Hellion Wei looked at the pair of eyes that longed to escape and reached out to support her. Only then did she realize that her arm had been dislocated when she pulled just now. She really could not imagine that someone would dare to do such a thing right in front of the Yamen entrance. Private Advisor Zhang, you heard the truth of the matter. Hellion Vivian lowered her voice. Most people would know that this was a sign that she was about to lose her temper. Private Advisor Zhang still wanted to explain for the two men, Lord Wei, if you still want to protect your reputation as a private advisor, Arrest them immediately. Hellion Vivian sneered, otherwise, I'll throw you into the prison too. Private Advisor Zhang panicked when he heard this. After all, he had never seen such a tough county magistrate. He had no choice but to ask his men to detain the two men first. The burly man seemed to be very unconvinced as he stared at the woman. The woman was so frightened that she took a step back. Hellion Vivian saw this and softened her voice. You need medical treatment. Come with me to the yamen first. I want to go home. The woman did not raise her head. Big drops of tears were rolling down her cheeks. Hellion Vivian glanced at Private Advisor Zhang, who was not far away. You can't avoid this matter by going home. Sometimes when you're targeted, you have to get rid of that person once and for all. Those people once said that they would take the life of anyone who gets in their way. If Lord Wei doesn't have connections with the higher-ups and helped me vent my anger, you will become their target sooner or later. It's hard to find good people nowadays, and even harder to find good officials. I don't want Lord Wei to ruin your career because of me. The other party was younger than her, and looked about the same age as her younger brother. Her younger brother was beaten up so badly that he could not get out of bed because he wanted to go against those people. Hellion Vivian changed her posture and put down the teacup in her hand. As an official, it's my duty to serve the people. If I don't help you with this matter, how can I be considered a good official? Lord Wei, you're still young. You don't understand. There are many people like me who have been targeted by the Yin family's old master. The women who were abducted even jointly wrote a petition to collect evidence and planned to go to the capital city to complain. However, they were stopped by the prefectural magistrates' people before they could leave the province. The relationship between them is too deep. It's so deep that ordinary people like us can't afford to offend them. Hellion Vivian smiled. There's no such thing as whether you can afford to offend or not. There's only right and wrong. After talking for so long, I still don't know your name. My name is Lu Yin. The woman's eyes were filled with worry. My lord, please listen to my advice. We can just move away. Since old Master Yin is still unconscious, he won't notice if we leave. You still have to stay in Fuping County for a while. I know you're an upright person, but you can only blame yourself for being unlucky when you encounter such a situation. Hellion Vivian interrupted her with a faint smile. Lu Yin, I've already understood the basic situation. I've also asked Private Advisor Long to make a record. You can go back first. The yamen will probably look for you tomorrow. You don't have to panic by then. Just say what you need to say. Since I'm here, I'll change Fuping County. There's no such thing as being unlucky. As I said before, as an official, it's my duty to serve the people. Lu Yin looked at the gentle smile on Hellion Vivian's face. It was probably because she had never seen such an official before. It was as if he had the power to convince people just by standing there, even though he was just a child. Xiong. Hellion Vivian's voice changed and became much deeper. Before Lu Yin could react, a black shadow flashed in front of her eyes. That person was 3 heads taller than her. Not only was he tall, but he was also very burly. She did not know how his hands and feet were so nimble. He was carrying a long black pipe on his shoulder. She could not tell what he was doing. She only felt that this person was not to be trifled with. He was even more terrifying than the hired thugs in the Yen Manor. Young lord. Xiong chuckled. Are you looking for me? Hellion Vivian glanced at Lu Yin. Go back with Miss Lu Yin. If anyone dares to harass her, beat them up regardless of whether they're from the Yin Manor or the yamen. Don't worry, young lord. A man who hits a woman is a disgrace to all men. I'll beat them up until they cry for their parents. Xiong patted his chest and promised. Hellion Vivian trusted his ability to beat people up. After she sent the two of them off with a smile, the yamen's manservant rushed in and reported loudly, My lord, there's a message from the Yen Manor. They want to invite you to Tianfeng Pavilion for a gathering. Chapter 463. The Yin Manor wants to have a gathering with me? Hellion Vivian and Beligaju looked at each other. Beligaju still looked indifferent, but Hellion Vivian had a hint of playfulness in her eyes. The servant who reported to her nodded and said, Old Master Yen said that since you have just taken office, he wants to set up a welcome banquet for you. Hellion Vivian smiled. I don't even know Old Master Yen. Why would he set up a welcome banquet for me? You don't have to think too much. Old Master Yen does this every year when a new county magistrate takes office. In the servant's opinion, this was normal. However, he did not know that the information that was accidentally leaked was Old Master Yan's doing. A businessman who was so knowledgeable about official matters was definitely not easy to deal with. It was better to meet him early than late. Since he had sent her an invitation, she had to go and have a meal even if it was a hongmen banquet. Hellion Vivian folded the invitation in her hand. All right, lead the way then. The banquet was held in the best wine shop in Fuping County. This wine shop was famous in the surrounding villages. Every dish was very expensive, so ordinary people would not be able to enter. The owner of this wine shop was Old Master Yen. Old Master Yen and the others had already arrived. They were well dressed and well fed. He wore a large gold ring on his finger and drank his tea with a sullen expression. Private Advisor Zhang was standing beside him, whispering something to him with his head lowered. Old Master Yen laughed, as the saying goes, a new official sweeps clean after taking office. This way guy is quite daring. Don't worry, I won't start a feud with him right away. I'll see how he reacts later. If he knows what's good for him, I'll let it go. The main thing is that Magistrate Liao wants to make friends with him, right, Magistrate Liao? Private Advisor Zhang was surprised to hear that. Who was this Magistrate Liao? He was in charge of several counties. Why did he choose Lord Wei, who had the surname Lai? Magistrate Liao picked up his teacup and took a sip. 2 days ago, the Imperial Court allocated a sum of money to Fuping County. It has to go through Lord Wei's hands. If we want to get the money, we have to rope him in. Allocate it to Fuping County? It was the first time Old Master Yen heard about this. He could not help but look surprised. How did Lord Wei have the ability to get the Imperial Court to allocate money to him? Does he have a powerful force behind him? Private Advisor Zhang's eyes widened. That can't be. I asked Lord Wei this morning, and he doesn't look like someone behind him. Besides, he's dressed very plainly. The two of you have been by my side for too long, so your thoughts are complicated. Magistrate Liao laughed heartily. What do you mean by power? It's just a coincidence. The retired emperor has been doing a lot of things in Hebei recently. Our Fuping County is also producing a lot of jujubes. If we do well, of course, good things will fall on our heads. Old Master Yen heaved a sigh of relief. So that's the case. That's hard to say. When that Wei guy arrives, we'll be more polite to him. As long as he gets on our boat, we'll be able to get the money. That's the theory. As Magistrate Liao spoke, he turned around and instructed Private Advisor Zhang. You should follow Lord Wei more closely. He's a new official. I've asked around. He's just better at studying and doesn't know many people. He knows more about the twists and turns of officialdom. It's inevitable that he doesn't think of some things, and it makes people uncomfortable when he handles them. We should rope him in if we can. If we can't rope him in, we'll be able to react quickly when we notice a problem. Private Advisor Zhang nodded and said, When I saw him doing things this morning, I felt that he's a little too tough. Hellion Vivian looked at Magistrate Liao's face. I haven't asked. You are? Old Master Yen laughed again. Lord Wei is really a new official. You haven't even met Magistrate Liao. Logically speaking, shouldn't you meet the magistrate first before taking office? Chapter 464. Xiao Wei's situation is different. My superior is anxious. Magistrate Liao waved his hand, indicating that he did not care. It's not too late to know each other now. You have to manage Fuping County well. Hellion Wei smirked. Haha, I will definitely deal with the matters that need to be dealt with. For example, when I arrived at the Yamen today, I saw 2 burly men trying to rob a girl on the street. I immediately arrested them and now they are still in prison. I believe Private Advisor Zhang has already told you about this. Is that so? Magistrate Liao looked surprised. Hellion Vivian smiled again. There was a hint of meaning in her thin lips. Does Magistrate Liao not know anything? Of course, Magistrate Liao slammed the wooden table. These people are deceiving their superiors and subordinates. It's time to teach them a lesson. Hellion Vivian glanced at Old Master Yan, who had an unpleasant expression on his face, and said calmly, if Magistrate Liao wants to do it, it will definitely be effective. I don't dare to say that it will be effective. Magistrate Liao said meaningfully, however, it is still effective to make someone obedient. Lord Wei, you must remember this. Was he warning her? The smile on Hellion Vivian's face deepened, but there was no change in her expression. On the contrary, Beligaju, who was sitting beside her, looked at Magistrate Liao with his beautiful eyes, which had never been seen before. Magistrate Liao did not notice it. He only felt that the side of his face was a little cold. He took a sip of tea to dispel the coldness in his body. Then he looked at Hellion Vivian. Seeing that she did not have much of a reaction, he thought that Hellion Vivian was thinking about what he said and was afraid of him. It was fine as long as she was afraid. Everything had to stop at a certain point. He still wanted to have a good talk with this person with the surname Wei. It was not worth it to fall out with her over 2 servants. I'm here to discuss the development of Fuping County with you, little Wei. As Magistrate Liao spoke, he picked up a piece of vegetable with his chopsticks and put it in his mouth to chew. You are well educated. Think about what we should do if we want to become rich in Fuping County. I have discussed this with Old Yan. Old Yan is the most successful businessman in Fuping County. His opinion is that we should build a road. As long as we build this road, we can send all the fruits and pears in Fuping County to the capital to sell. When Hellion Vivian heard this, she put down the teacup in her hand and said, if I remember correctly, there should be a road in Fuping County that leads to the capital city. Since there was already a road, what else could it be but to make money by building another one? How can one path be enough? Old Master Yan said, the more roads we build, the better. What I mean is, the more benefits we'll have in Fuping County. When Hellion Vivian saw the expression on Old Master Yan and Magistrate Liao's face, the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. As expected, they came with the intention of making money. Since ancient times, the project of building roads had been a big fat piece of meat in the eyes of officials of all levels. Before she came, her imperial grandfather had said that he was going to allocate a batch of funds to Fuping County. He was worried that the funds would be embezzled by his subordinates, so he asked her to be careful when she came. Magistrate Liao had his eyes on the funds before the funds arrived, and he even came up with the idea of building roads. It seemed that the people in the capital city had their hands in this matter as well. However, she was not sure which family this Magistrate Liao belonged to. Once she was clear, she would deal with all of them. Hellion Vivian drank 2 mouthfuls of tea and said in a calm voice, the Yamen doesn't have much money. The smile on his face turned cold. Since Little Wei is not so ambitious, then stay in the Yamen and think about how to serve the people. This is what I have been thinking about all along. Hellion Wei did not even touch her food as she stood up and said, the 2 people we caught are still being interrogated. When the interrogation is done, I would like to invite Old Master Yan to come to the Yamen. Lord Liao, please continue to drink, I will not accompany you. Old Master Yan was dumbfounded. What did she mean by asking him to come to the Yamen after the interrogation is done? What was he going to do? To bring people back? After Hellion Vivian and the rest left, Old Master Yan's first reaction was to ask Magistrate Liao, what is the meaning of this Wei person? Magistrate Liao's face darkened. He is just a nameless pawn. He wants to pray for the people because of his hot-bloodedness. However, looking at him, I don't think he wants to have a big conflict with us. Don't worry and do it boldly. Get all the money you want for me. Father Lu looked at them worriedly and quickly stopped them. That's Lord Liao's base camp. Everyone there has connections with the officials in the capital. If you go there, you'll lose your life. Lord Wei, please don't be impulsive. It won't do you any good. Chapter 466. Helly and Vivian smiled. We know what we're doing. Xiong, you'll stay here with Miss Liu. I'll say the same thing again, no matter who comes, we'll still beat them up. If someone doesn't know what's good for them, you can use the gun you're carrying at any time. Yes, Xiong accepted the order in a low voice. Every word he said seemed to shake the dry grass on the mud house. It was not unreasonable for Helly and Vivian to leave him here alone. He looked like the kind of person who was not to be trifled with. He was tall and strong and he had martial chi. As long as the other party did not attack seriously, Xiong could easily deal with a dozen yamen runners. It was because of Xiong's presence that the guards sent by the Yen manor did not dare to make a move. They looked at each other and decided to report back to the manor first. Old Master Yen, who was waiting to carry the beauty home, did not know what was going on. Seeing that the lady did not carry her back, he kicked the guard. Useless. You can't even do such a simple task. Old Master, it's not that we can't do it, but the newly appointed Master Wei sent a martial artist to squat at the entrance of Old Lu's house. We couldn't enter even if we wanted to. That person held his aching abdomen and said with difficulty, moreover, Master Wei is there, so we can't do anything. He left a long time ago. I heard that he's going to the provincial capital, but I don't know what he's going to do. As he was speaking, a report was heard from outside. Private Advisor Zhang is here. Old Master Yen had just turned his head when Private Advisor Zhang walked in hastily. Bad news, Old Master Yen, bad news. What's the matter? Speak slowly. The person who said this was not Old Master Yen, but Magistrate Liao, who walked out from the inner room. He was carrying a young lady in his arms. The young lady did not look very willing, but she seemed to be afraid of something. She let him do as he pleased and did not dare to resist. Magistrate Liao was originally in a good mood, but after Private Advisor Zhang's interference, his voice turned cold. Private Advisor Zhang spoke to Magistrate Liao with extra caution. Lord Liao, I don't know what's wrong with that Master Wei, but he's going to the provincial capital. Going to the provincial capital at this time? Magistrate Liao narrowed his eyes coldly. What does he want to do? Private Advisor Zhang took a deep breath and said, it seems to be to connect the fields to the river. Just this? Magistrate Liao raised his eyebrows. Nothing else? Private Advisor Zhang paused for a moment and glanced at Old Master Yen. He seems to want to punish Old Master Yen. Punish me? When Old Master Yen heard this, he jumped up in anger. I haven't even blamed that Wei fellow for ruining my plans, yet he still dares to report me to the provincial capital. Good, this is really good. I'll get someone to kill him right now. Upon hearing this, Magistrate Liao snorted. Nonsense. No matter what, he was still an official of the imperial court. He had just taken office, but he was killed by someone. Do you think that the higher-ups haven't been watching us closely enough recently? Do you want to find some trouble to taste? That's not what I meant, but look at that Wei fellow, isn't he asking for it the hard way? Old Master Yen stuck out his big belly and said, we just finished eating together. No matter how stupid he is, he should know what kind of status I have and what kind of status you have. He still wants to catch me. Isn't that looking down on you? Magistrate Liao was one of the calmer ones among them. Old Yen, you're too hot-tempered. Think about it, can he arrest you just because he wants to? So what if he goes to the provincial capital? Who will meet him? It doesn't matter if he has connections, but he doesn't have money. Not to mention meeting anyone. No one will even let him enter the mansion. As soon as Old Master Yen heard Magistrate Liao's words and imagined the scenario, he laughed out loud. You're right, why didn't I think of this? That Wei guy is going to face a lot of rejections when he enters the provincial capital. We can use this opportunity to take him down a notch. I'll let him know whose territory Fuping County belongs to. Shut up if you want to live in this county in the future, and get lost if you don't want to live in this county. That's right. Magistrate Liao took a sip of tea, his eyes darkened. The most important thing now is that batch of funds. Think of a way to get it, it's more reliable than anything else. Old Master Yen nodded as he listened. 2 hours had passed, but the Yen mansion was still in a state of luxury. The provincial capital was much more prosperous and peaceful than Fuping County, but it was just a facade. Hellion Vivian was indeed rejected, and she didn't even get to enter the gate. However, after being rejected, her first reaction was to look at Bailey Jiaju. She shook her head and said with conviction, "I thought that bringing the third prince out of the house would make me look good. In the capital, there are only a few officials who have seen me, let alone here," Bailey Jiaju said casually, but it also revealed his unparalleled nobility. Wei Wei also knew that it was impossible for the local officials to have seen third prince before. If they knew who this private advisor that they rejected outside the door was, she reckoned that afterwards, those people would definitely be extremely regretful, so regretful that even their intestines would turn green. However, it was precisely because none of the officials here had seen Baligaju that some things would be more effective. Otherwise, there would be no point in going incognito. However, it seems that I really should look for some connections. The corners of Wei Wei's mouth curved up as she turned around and arrived at a very luxurious-looking restaurant. Baligaju slowly turned the silver ring on his ring finger. The Li family's property? Nothing can escape your eyes. Hellion Vivian smiled faintly and walked in. The business in the restaurant was good, and because it was so good, there were many people walking in and out. Hellion Vivian stood downstairs and looked around, as if she was looking for someone. At this time, a man with a big belly bumped into her. He was still holding a wine cup in his hand. Hellion Vivian's reaction was fast enough. She moved her feet and dodged. However, because of the man's carelessness, the wine in the cup spilled out and stuck to his clothes. "You!" The man was angry on the spot. "Of all the places to stand, why did you have to stand here?" Hellion Vivian didn't say anything. She just looked at him indifferently, as if she was looking at an idiot. The man laughed coldly. "What are you looking at? You're just a villager. Do you know how much this set of clothes is worth? You're just a country bumpkin who has never seen the world. Now that the clothes are stained with wine, it can't be washed off. Tell me, how are you going to compensate me?" Hellion Vivian's thin lips curved, but those long and narrow eyes didn't have the slightest trace of warmth. "You were the one who bumped into me, and you still want compensation?" Chapter 467. "Oh, so you don't want to compensate?" The man looked down at Hellion Vivian arrogantly. Hellion Vivian didn't buy it at all. "You should be the one to compensate me." "You want me to compensate you?" The man seemed to have heard a joke. He went up to Hellion Vivian and tried to push her away. "Do you know who I am? No one in the provincial capital dares to ask me for compensation." Hellion Vivian stood there calmly like a tree. "That's because you haven't met me yet." When the man heard this, he seemed to have been set on fire. He went up and grabbed Hellion Vivian's clothes. He said in a gloomy voice, "What did you say? Say it again if you dare." Baligaju's eyes turned cold the moment the man grabbed Hellion Vivian's collar. If it wasn't for Hellion Wei Wei holding his hand, that man would have been dismembered by now. Hellion Vivian stopped him not because she wanted to let him go, but because she saw a familiar person walking over. When the man saw her face, he immediately shouted excitedly, "Boss, why are you here? Shouldn't you be at the Imperial?" "Chunliang." Hellion Vivian smiled and interrupted him. Then she shrugged and said, "Do you think I'm in a suitable situation to catch up with you?" Chunliang admitted that he was indeed confused. He didn't want to interact with these officials at first. It was because his father's position was too high. People in the provincial capital tried to curry favor with him, so he had no choice but to eat and drink like this every day. He was annoyed, but he didn't expect to see his boss when he came down the stairs. Moreover, his boss was being grabbed by the collar? This didn't fit her style. When she was in the academy, she could take on 10 people by herself. She wasn't violent at all. It wasn't like her. Although he thought so, he couldn't take it lying down when he saw his boss being grabbed by the collar. Without saying anything, Chunliang rushed over and gave the man a kick. He had always been an unyielding general. Of course he wouldn't waste his breath. The man's face was twisted from the kick. He held the round wooden table and cursed, "You lowly villagers! How dare you hit me? You've all gone blind." Men take them down. However, no one dared to make a move. The man slapped the table angrily. I'll take them down. Master Liao, the owner of the wine shop, wanted to approach the man and say something. The man with the surname Liao waved his hand and pushed him away. Don't talk nonsense with me. Country bumpkin, I will tell you today. My father is the current magistrate, and I am the law of this provincial capital. If you want to leave peacefully, you better kneel on the ground and kowtow to me 3 times. Otherwise, I will send people to arrest you right now. Hey, I thought he had a powerful background. Chunliang chuckled. So, he's just the son of a mere magistrate. Do you believe that I can kill you right now? Master Liao was used to running amok in the provincial capital all these years. Every time he mentioned his father's name, the other party would be scared witless. Who would have thought that he would meet 3 fearless people this time? Moreover, he couldn't hear the mockery in his voice. Chunliang sneered. Kill me? Since you want to compete with your family background, I will compete with you. Your father is the magistrate, right? Then do you know who my father is? Master Liao shook his head. The owner standing at the side couldn't bear to see him being so stupid. He reminded him softly, Master Chen is the second son of the governor of 3 provinces. Master Liao's expression changed immediately. His face turned extremely pale. Since 2 days ago, his father had been reminding him to find a way to invite Master Chen out for a meal and a drink so that he could be on good terms with him. He had tried for 2 days but failed to invite this mountain out. He didn't expect to meet him under such circumstances. The man with the surname Liao wished he hadn't said those words at all. Without thinking, he reached out his hand and slapped himself. He had to force a smile. Look at my eyes. I really didn't recognize Mount Tai. So it's Child Chen. Isn't this like the flood rushing against the Dragon King's temple? We don't recognize each other anymore. Who's your family? Chun Liang's principle was to get as far away as possible from those who dared to provoke their boss. Moreover, this Master Liao was a scumbag to begin with. Master Liao kept wiping the cold sweat on his forehead. Master Chen, please don't say that. If there's a misunderstanding, let's solve it properly. Misunderstanding? Chun Liang had no idea what was going on. He was enraged when he saw his boss being bullied the moment he arrived. Now that he heard Liao's words, he subconsciously turned around to look at Helian Wei Wei. However, when he saw the silent figure, Chun Liang almost threw the wine glass in his hand out of anger. To the 3rd prince. Why is he here? Did he come with the boss? But even if he was the boss, the otherworldly 3rd prince shouldn't appear in such a remote place. He had just compared his father with Liao in front of the 3rd prince. It was so humiliating. Chun Liang's face turned red. He scratched the back of his head embarrassedly. He wanted to bow to Beligaju, but he was afraid that there was something going on and his identity as a royal was exposed. He could only stand there helplessly and call out again, "Boss?" Helian Vivian said calmly, "Master Liao bumped into me and wants me to compensate him. There shouldn't be any misunderstanding." Liao's intestines had already turned green. When he heard Helian Wei Wei's words, he immediately took out his money pouch, bowed and said, "I'm the one who should compensate young master. It's my fault." Seeing him like this, Chun Liang felt relieved. He didn't take his money and only asked him to take his things and leave, so that the boss wouldn't be annoyed if he saw it. The man surnamed Liao nodded continuously. He listened to whatever Chun Liang said. When they were out of the tavern, he kicked the servant beside him and scolded, "You're a piece of trash. Why didn't you remind me that he was Master Chen?" I haven't seen Master Chen before. I don't know him at all." The servant's face was swollen. He felt so wronged. Master Liao sneered. "It's my bad luck. I didn't expect a poor brat to know Master Chen. I can't let this go. You keep an eye on those 2 poor bastards. Once young Master Chen leaves, you will teach them a good lesson. This isn't good." The servant reminded his master softly, "Young master, they were beaten up. Master Chen will definitely not let this go. When the time comes, you'll be the unlucky one." Chapter 468. Bam! Master Liao lifted his leg again and kicked the servant half a meter away. What do you mean by I'm the unlucky one? Who gave you the right to interfere with my business? Just do what I tell you to do. If you can't hide it, then kill them. They're just two country bumpkins. In Mr. Liao's mind, he had always thought that Helian Weiwei only met young Master Chen because of some luck. However, he had forgotten that Chen Liang had called Helian Vivian boss. At this moment, Chen Liang had rejected all social engagements and specially reserved a private room. He ordered a table full of dishes and asked the servants to serve them. He did not dare to sit down throughout the entire process as he was afraid that he would make a mistake. Firstly, it was because of the third prince's identity. Secondly, it was because the third prince himself had a very strong presence. The servant beside Chen Liang had never seen his fearless young master like this. His eyes darted between Helian Vivian and Beligaju, but he did not dare to say anything. Helian Vivian supported her chin with one hand and smiled casually. All right, Chen Liang, take a seat. Don't be so busy like a little bee. When we were in the academy, you mentioned that you would come to the provincial capital with your father after you leave the academy. I'm here to ask you to do something for me. What do you mean by help? Boss, if you need anything, just ask me. Chen Liang's answer was very firm. However, when he sat down, he chose the seat furthest away from Beligaju. Beligaju's slender fingers turned the teacup in his palm and looked at him with a faint smile. Chen Liang felt numb and immediately sat up straight. His posture was even more awkward than when he was in the academy. Helian Vivian laughed and patted his shoulder. All right, you don't have to be so restrained. He's my private advisor now. His surname is Long, private advisor. Chen Liang could not control himself and shouted. Helian Weiwei hummed in agreement and laughed. I haven't had time to tell anyone that I've come to your provincial capital to be a county magistrate. If Chen Liang was surprised to see Helian Vivian just now, he was surprised and shocked at the same time. His first reaction was, boss is here. All the corrupt officials in this place are dead meat. My father is definitely just a decoration. Most importantly, the third prince is the military advisor. No one would believe such a thing even if it was told. No, I have to slow down. Chen Liang picked up the teacup and took a sip. He could not help but ask, boss, which county did you go to? Fuping. Helian Weiwei only said 2 words. Chen Liang's expression froze. What is it? Yes. Helian Weiwei smirked. Why, you know Fuping too? Chen Liang raised his head and gulped down a cup of water. He said, even my father can't get involved in Fuping. The water is very deep and no one dares to touch it. Now that you and the royal family are here, there should be a turning point for this matter. Seems like you do know something. Helian Vivian put down the teacup in her hand and gestured for him to continue. Chen Liang did not hide anything. There is a lot of land in Fuping. The imperial court has already issued a memorial saying that they want to build it into a granary that mainly supplies food to the capital. For 2 years they have allocated countless silvers. The retired emperor has his eyes on this place because it's suitable for farming. When the time comes, more food will be produced. This way, the people won't have to suffer every time there is a drought and the national treasury will be empty. However, every year, the retired emperor did allocate the silvers, but there was no result. Not only was there no food, but the silvers were also gone and the drought was getting worse. The retired emperor was very angry at that time. To put it bluntly, the silvers were embezzled layer by layer. The retired emperor knew very well, but this line was too deep. The retired emperor could not investigate it himself, so he ordered his subordinates to do so. There were only 2 possibilities. No matter how high the rank of the official came, they would either join in the evil or take charge. They would not really find the root of the problem. Take my father for example. To put it nicely, he is the provincial governor of 3 provinces, so he is very prestigious. However, what is a provincial governor like him in the capital? Any young master in the capital city is more influential than my father. We don't know who we will offend, and we don't know if there is any point in doing this. Even if we find out that something fishy is going on, the higher-ups will try their best to cover it up. This is the most difficult part of Fuping County. Do you know who is behind Magistrate Liao? The servant could not believe that the other party could remain so calm after hearing what the young master said. He could not help but take another look at Hellion Vivian. Chen Liang said in a deep voice, "He is one of the elders of the 4 influential families. Speaking of which, this elder has some connections with Boss. He is not just anyone, his surname is also Hellion. In the past, he and Old Master Hellion complemented each other and were very close friends." Hellion Vivian listened quietly without saying a word. Seeing her like this, Chen Liang continued, "His identity is special. The Hellion family is not stable yet, so he has the opportunity to do whatever he wants. Moreover, with the help of the other families, it is difficult for the retired emperor to arrest him without concrete evidence." Hellion Vivian spun the teacup. "What is the relationship between him and Magistrate Liao?" "He is the son-in-law who married into the Hellion family. He has been helping Elder Hellion to earn money in the officialdom. Boss, you have been in the capital all this time, so you probably don't know. These elders are very smart now. They keep a low profile in the capital because they are afraid that the royal family will catch them by the tail and punish them. Therefore, they simply put the method of earning money in the surrounding county. This way, not only would there be no restrictions on earning money, it would also not be easily discovered by others. After all, it is separated by several levels." Chen Liang said this in a serious manner. Hellion Vivian basically understood. She turned to look at Beligaju. Both of them vaguely had an idea in their minds. However, she came here mainly for another matter. "Liangzi, ask your father to allocate the funds to me first. As the provincial governor of 3 provinces, he should have some cash flow on his hands. The drought in Fuping County needs to be solved. Our identities cannot be leaked yet, so we can only ask your father to come with us. You are here, so there is no need to ask him to come. If my father hears about it, he will definitely come here immediately." Chen Liang was telling the truth. His father was very loyal to the 3rd prince. Hellion Weiwei smiled and said, "If your father hears this tone of yours, you'll have to suffer again. Let's not talk about this first. Boss, let me pick out a set of clothes for you and His Highness. What you are wearing." Chen Liang stopped talking. Hellion Vivian took a sip of tea. "It will be the same no matter what we wear. Don't bother." "Okay." Chen Liang agreed with his mouth, but in his heart, he was thinking that it was degrading to let his boss and the 3rd prince wear such clothes. No wonder those people didn't think of their identities in that direction. That's what it means to be blind. Chapter 469. After the discussion, Chen Liang wanted to ask his father to come over immediately. However, his subordinate told him that the governor was busy with the provincial capital and could not find the time for now. Beligaju did not say anything. He only wrote a few simple words to the manservant and asked him to pass the letter to Governor Chan. His actions were casual. The manservant was stunned. He did not understand how an advisor from a county could be so daring to order him around. "Young master, this master doesn't accept just anyone's letter." The manservant had his reasons for saying so. Ever since Governor Chen took office, many officials tried to get close to him by writing letters. If he accepted the letter, it would be troublesome in the future. Hellion Vivian curled her lips into a smile when she heard this. "Don't worry, your master will definitely accept my advisor's letter." Beligaju brushed his clothes. His handsome side profile was full of mischief. Chen Liang could not help but swallow his saliva when he saw this. He did not expect his subordinate to say such a thing. He slapped the back of the manservant's head hard and said, "What are you nagging about? Go quickly. If you delay this letter, you'll see how my father will punish you." The manservant was not completely clueless. After hearing his young master's words, he more or less figured it out. Could it be that he had another identity? But what was his identity? Was he more important than his master? The manservant could not figure it out. However, he still had to listen to his young master, so he hurriedly sent the letter out. After the matter was settled, Hellion Vivian did not plan to stay for long. She planned to return home. Although Fuping County was not far away from the provincial capital, the management of the land was urgent. Moreover, the money mentioned by the imperial grandfather was coming soon. She had to stay in Fuping County to protect the money. When Chunliang heard that Helian Weiwei was leaving, he wanted to tag along as well. Boss, just let me go with you. If anything happens to both of you within my father's jurisdiction, my father will definitely regret not coming to visit you today. Besides, I want to help the people of Fuping County too. Helian Vivian thought for a moment and said, You can follow us, but you have to be careful not to reveal our identity. That's not a problem. Chunliang had just finished making a promise. When he turned his head and saw Beligaju's godlike face, he couldn't help but move to the side. If others saw his humble appearance, they would be very surprised. Everyone in the provincial capital knew that although young Master Chun didn't run amok in the village like other people, his temper was so bad that even his father couldn't do anything about it. Wherever he went, he would be praised by others. Now, Helian Vivian smiled heartlessly and allowed Beligaju to reach out and hold her. She lowered her voice and said, Is it fun to bully my little brother? When have I ever bullied him? Beligaju brushed aside the strands of hair on her face, revealing his noble aura. Helian Vivian pursed her lips. He's like a mouse seeing a cat when he sees you. That's his problem. Beligaju curved his thin lips into a faint smile. Chunliang was speechless. Can you two be quieter when you're showing off your love? He heard everything. Okay. It was not a big deal to bring Chunliang along. After all, they were in Fuping County and he was a provincial law enforcement officer. No matter how daring that Liao guy was, he wouldn't dare to do anything to the governor's second son. Helian Vivian thought that Chunliang might come in handy when Governor Chan couldn't make it. Chunliang was so happy that he was blowing bubbles in his heart when she told him that. He had never been so valued by his boss before. In short, the few martial arts students who graduated from the academy always had an inhuman sense of admiration for Helian Vivian. It was not only because she was the boss of Profound Heaven, but more importantly, everyone in the academy only took the young masters and ladies from the capital of the superior compound seriously and treated them with a lukewarm attitude. Helian Vivian was the only one who didn't discriminate between them because of the different compounds. She would often tell them where to put some materials so that they could make lighter martial arts. Until now, Chunliang would still look at his boss with starry eyes. He really didn't expect Helian Vivian to be an official. It was so difficult to be an official. He had participated in more than 10 written examinations, but he had never passed. He didn't expect that his boss would become a county magistrate right after she graduated from the academy. She was so amazing. That was why people said that children were too naive. They didn't know that there was such a thing as taking the back door. Helian Vivian patted Chunliang's head. It wasn't easy for you to grow up. Governor Chun was the one who didn't have it easy. Beligaju added insult to injury with an indifferent expression. Chunliang was speechless. Why did he feel like his IQ was being mocked? It was almost dusk. The news of the road construction in Fuping County had spread throughout the provincial capital. Magistrate Liao was in the limelight. The officials from other counties wanted to meet Magistrate Liao at this time. Even if they couldn't get a share of the benefits, at least Magistrate Liao would definitely be promoted after the project was completed. It was better for them to build their relationship now than to travel thousands of miles to find him in the capital. As Old Master Yan, who had worked with Magistrate Liao for many years, there was no need to mention the benefits. Even Private Advisor Zhang would be looked up to wherever he went now. He was holding a Yixing clay teapot in his hand. When he saw Helian Vivian and the rest walking into the yamen, he exclaimed, Lord Wei, who went to the provincial capital to beg for alms for the people, is finally back. I wonder how it went. Did you see the people from the provincial capital? Helian Vivian glanced at him and smiled without saying anything. When Private Advisor Zhang saw that there was only one more person, he had an answer in his heart. If Lord Wei really saw the people, he should have received the money. It was impossible for him to come back in such a state. Someone should have sent him back. Furthermore, he did not receive a letter from the provincial capital saying that someone had met the person in the provincial capital. It seemed that Lord Wei had not even touched the surface. Private Advisor Zhang did not know that Hellion Vivian had not only received the money, but also brought along the beloved son of the person in the provincial capital. When he saw Hellion Vivian's situation, he thought that she had come back empty-handed. He said sarcastically, "Sigh, this is how life is. Not everything can be done according to one's wishes. Some places can only be entered through connections. Lord Wei, you don't have to feel depressed about this." Private Advisor Zhang took a sip from the Yixing clay teapot as he spoke. His smug expression was enough to make anyone want to beat him up. Hellion Vivian replied slowly, "Am I depressed? How can you tell?" Private Advisor Zhang put down the teapot in his hand. When Chen Liang heard this, he was wondering where this old man came from, and why he was so arrogant. Then Private Advisor Zhang spoke again. Chapter 470. Magistrate Liao and Old Master Yan have gone to the provincial capital. I guess they are discussing with Lord Chen about the road construction. Oh right, Lord Wei, you don't know who Lord Chen is, right? Who is he? Hellion Vivian asked him playfully. The newly appointed governor of the 3 provinces is someone who was transferred from the capital. You don't know how good Lord Li's relationship with Magistrate Liao is. In my opinion, there should be no problem with the road construction. When the time comes, as long as we behave ourselves and don't cause trouble for Magistrate Liao, we will definitely have a chance to be promoted. Private Advisor Zhang spoke as if he had seen how close Magistrate Liao and Governor Chen were. Chen Liang, on the other hand, cursed out loud. How could he not know who his father was close to? His father hated this Magistrate Liao the most. The only reason why he could sit down and talk to him was because they couldn't fall out with each other. Close? If they were close, how could this fellow not know that the person standing in front of him was Magistrate Liao's son? Hellion Weiwei's lips curved into a smile. Chen Liang looked at her with tears in his eyes. "Boss, don't stop me. Let me beat him to death." Hellion Vivian patted his shoulder, telling him not to get agitated. How could he not be agitated? These people were simply slandering his father. "Boss, tell the royal family that my father is definitely a good official. Although he is not very pure, there is a difference between him and these people." Hellion Vivian wanted to laugh when she saw his big, watery eyes. However, this was not the right place. She could only look at Beligaju. Beligaju walked over and lowered his voice so that only Chen Liang could hear him. "If you let her touch your shoulder again, do you believe that I will let you walk out of here on your back?" Chen Liang immediately stood up straight. However, he felt wronged. Boss was only comforting him. Isn't the royal family being too possessive? Private Advisor Zhang was not aware of what was going on between the two of them. He assumed that they were merely 2 of Hellion Weiwei's subordinates who were having a discussion. He continued proudly, "Lord Wei, listen to me. I've been in Fuping County for a few years now. What you're doing now is a waste of effort. Why don't you follow Magistrate Liao and the others and do something practical? That way you'll be promoted faster." According to what Private Advisor Zhang said, being an official is only for quick promotion. "Can't I work for the people?" Hellion Vivian asked him in return. Private Advisor Zhang's expression darkened. He put on a fake smile and said, "That depends on what Lord Wei thinks. It's getting late and I still have some matters to attend to. Lord Wei, you should rest early. Who knows, you might dream of someone offering you money to cure the drought." These words were brimming with sarcasm. It was simply saying that Hellion Weiwei wanted to accomplish this task, but was simply a fool's dream. Private Advisor Zhang did not wait for Hellion Vivian to reply. He left with his servant. Chen Liang was furious. "This is the first time in my life that I've seen a private advisor who dares to challenge a county magistrate. There's no law in Fuping County. Boss, how can you hold it in? I don't have any status. It's normal for me to encounter such a situation." Hellion Vivian asked the Yamen runners to serve her tea. After they left, she continued, "I'll deal with these people sooner or later. What's the fun in dealing with one? It's more interesting to deal with them all at once." Chen Liang was still angry at first. However, when he heard Hellion Vivian's words, his blood boiled. He thought about his boss's methods in the past. Every single one of them was amazing. Chapter 471. Why would he come here? Governor Chen's expression changed in an instant. He felt as if he was struck by lightning. The servant watched his master's expression change from tiredness to intense disbelief. Before he could react, his master grabbed his sleeve tightly. Where is the person who wrote the letter now? I'm not sure. The servant did not understand why his master, who had always been as calm as a mountain, would suddenly become so agitated. He stuttered, but I heard that he was the private advisor of Fuping County Magistrate. He should have returned to Fuping County by now. Governor Chen shook his head with a bitter smile. He's not a private advisor, he's... Governor Chen paused intentionally as if he had thought of something. He was very regretful, sigh. Why didn't I receive this letter earlier? Not a private advisor? Then what is it? Xiaofeng asked blankly. Governor Chen did not know what to do with these people around his beloved son. Each one of them was dumber than the other. Wait a minute. Where's the young master? Governor Chen asked. Xiaofeng touched his head. He should have gone to Fuping County with the private advisor. Governor Chen smiled when he heard that. Liangzi has finally done something that a human should do this time. Quickly prepare a carriage for me. I'm going to Fuping County now. But master, it's going to be dark soon. It's not safe to travel at night in this remote village. Xiaofeng was thinking about what could be more important than his master's safety. However, Governor Chen was very insistent. Go quickly. If you're too slow, I'll punish you. After listening to these words, Xiaofeng became more and more curious about the two people from Fuping County. Logically speaking, they were just a lowly county magistrate and a private advisor. How did the young master and the master become so different from their usual selves? Unless... Xiaofeng suddenly came to a realization, and his eyes started to shake. Unless those two people had some kind of extraordinary identity, to be able to hide so deeply, who exactly was it? The only people who were older than his master were those in the capital city. Xiaofeng did not dare to think further. He suddenly shuddered. The sky outside darkened even more. The atmosphere in the restaurant had obviously changed. Many people were intentionally or unintentionally excluding Hellion Vivian. Private advisor Zhang was so arrogant now that he had the upper hand. Old Master Yen had even announced that he would beat anyone who dared to stop him from capturing the maidservants in the future. That being said, no one dared to approach De Xiong when he was staying with the Liu family. However, before this wave could subside, a new wave rose from that wave. Magistrate Liao was naturally angry when Hellion Vivian refused to sign the money. This Wei person was really giving him a headache, but he couldn't kill her directly. After all, assassinating an official of the imperial court was punishable by death. However, she was blocking his way of making money. It was annoying to see her like this. If he didn't teach her an unforgettable lesson, he wouldn't be able to swallow his anger. Private advisor Zhang observed his expression and said in a low voice, "Don't worry, Lord Liao. The people from the provincial capital will be here tomorrow. When they arrive, I'll arrange a good show and let that Wei person suffer a great loss. He's just a newcomer, he doesn't know anything about Fuping County, let alone the villagers of Fuping County. When the time comes, he'll know what it means to refuse a toast. He'll suffer a forfeit." After Magistrate Liao listened to Private Advisor Zhang's plan, a smile finally appeared on his face. He clinked the wine cup in his hand with Private Advisor Zhang's and reminded him and Old Master Yen to sell the grain in the warehouse as soon as possible. Magistrate Liao had a good plan. He would not return to Fuping County in the future. Since Gao Shang had left this time, he would take as much as he could. Wouldn't it be foolish to leave a pile of disaster relief food for the next greedy person? He might as well take all the food and use it to bribe the higher-ups when he arrived at the capital city. Unlike them, Hellion Vivian only had one thing on her mind, which was to fight a drought. She asked a few shadow guards to do some reconnaissance to confirm the land trend of Fuping County. Then she went to the river to take a look. Chen Liang did not understand. "Boss, there's water here, but it's too far away from the fields. It'll tire the villagers out if they have to come here to fetch water. If they look like me and De Xiong, it'll be easy. Each of us can carry 4 buckets. I can carry 10 buckets. Xiong chuckled, I'm strong so I can carry more. In response, Little Bald Head, who appeared behind the crowd, pouted with a meat bun in his mouth arrogantly, only 10 buckets. Isn't 10 buckets a lot? Chunliang's first reaction was to jump up. He was dumbfounded when he turned around to take a look. Why was youngest uncle here? Little Bald Head glanced at his stunned expression in an overbearing manner. He then turned to his third brother and began to complain. Third brother, Grandpa's son is getting more and more naggy. I wanted to go out to look for you, but he didn't allow me to. He even forbade me from eating the red-crowned cranes in the backyard. I couldn't stand this kind of oppression, so I sneaked out. Chunliang was speechless. Wait a minute, are red-crowned cranes meant to be eaten? Different from the other reactions, Bailey Jiaju's expression was very indifferent. He only glanced at the person behind Little Bald Head and said in an indifferent tone, the matter of 7th young master coming out, is there anyone who stayed behind to tell grandfather? Master, and she and the rest have already informed the old master. The old master is very angry, but he specially instructed his subordinates to tell you to take good care of the young master. An Ing was dressed in black, and his whereabouts were a mystery. If it wasn't for Baligaju, he wouldn't have shown himself at all. Even if he did show up, he deliberately changed the way he addressed him. Baligaju nodded indifferently and said, You may leave. An Ing respectfully knelt on one knee and disappeared in front of the crowd in a flash. Come here. Baligaju's voice was cold as he beckoned with his finger. Little Bald Head took a bite of the meat bun and patted the dust on his body that had been on the road for the past few days. Only then did he approach Baligaju and said with a dignified expression, Third brother, stay here and break through these rocks blocking the way. Baligaju said slowly, You like to play, after you're done I'll feed you meat. Fight? Break. Chunliang and Xiong looked at each other, then simultaneously looked at the small hill in front of them. They couldn't believe it. Was this something a person could break through? Third brother, other than meat, are there any prawns? I've been wanting to eat things in the water recently. I didn't even get to eat the goldfish last time. Little Bald Head said as he raised his soft little fist and punched forward. There was a rumbling sound. The sound was too fast. Before Chunliang and Xiong could react, a hole appeared on the small hill. Xiong looked at Chunliang with watery eyes. His head was full of stone dust, and his expression was very messy. Chapter 472. This is too much for my pride. I can't even compare to a child. Chunliang comforted him. Little martial uncle has always been like this, you'll get used to it. He had heard a lot of rumors when he was in the academy. As expected, little martial uncle, who could beat up all the teachers in the academy, was not someone to be trifled with. Helian Weiwei was looking at the surrounding mountains, thinking about the obstacle of the hillside. When she heard the noise, she walked over to take a look and saw little Seven holding a meat bun in his mouth, clenching his little fist and hitting the hillside repeatedly. After a total of 5 hits, the road was cleared. His little handsome face was very calm. Needless to say, it was obvious whose idea this was. Helian Weiwei glanced sideways at Bailey Jiaju and asked with a smile, Were you the one who called little Seven over? He can't stay at home. Baligaju took out a handkerchief to wipe the little one's hand and said, It's only a matter of time before he comes out. In other words, everything was going according to his plan. Helian Weiwei coughed softly. If Magistrate Liao and the others knew that the private advisor whom they had always looked down upon was actually so sinister and black-bellied, would they all burst into tears? However, now that the road is cleared, we can dig the soil and bury the pipes to draw the water. Helian Vivian was in a better mood now that she had finally gotten rid of one of her worries. Father Lu was not so optimistic. Lord Wei, the position of the river is lower than that of the fields. It's impossible to bury the pipes to draw the water. Everyone knows that water flows to the lower places. How can it flow to the higher places? If it was as simple as burying the pipes to draw the water, Fuping County would not have been in a drought for 3 years. Even if the officials could not think of this method, they had done farm work all year round. Father Lu said that because he was familiar with the terrain of Fuping County, Don't worry, Father Lu, I'll solve all these problems. Hellion Vivian did not explain further. After all, the ancient people would not understand a water pump with a pneumatic device, so she only mentioned it briefly. If it was someone else who said this, Father Lu would definitely think it was a fantasy, but since it was Hellion Vivian who said it, he felt that it was reliable. However, Lord Wei, you better be careful. The people from the provincial capital will arrive tomorrow. They are here to repair the roads. When I was plowing the fields just now, I saw Private Advisor Zhang come to the fields and talk to the villagers about how to repair the roads. Old Man Lu paused for a moment before continuing. I see that quite a few of the youngsters have already believed it. They are thinking of jointly petitioning to ask why Lord Wei didn't allow them to build the road. Is it because he can't bear to part with the funds and wants to swallow the money? When Chun Liang heard this, his eyes widened. How could our boss lack money? What were the commoners thinking? There were already 2 roads in Fuping County, and it would be a waste to build another one. Moreover, they might even reap all the benefits from the construction. Wasn't the most important thing now to solve the drought? Why are those people so suspicious of boss after hearing a few words from others? Old Man Lu also felt embarrassed. He had seen what Lord Wei had done for the past 2 days. He shouldn't have been slandered like this. That Private Advisor Zhang was shameless to a certain extent. Some people who didn't know better would be fooled by him, and think that they could change Fuping County's current situation by repairing the roads. Although Old Man Lu was just a farmer, he was not completely clueless. He thought for a while and looked at Hellion Vivian. Lord Wei, do you want to go to the higher-ups and ask them? If you really do come tomorrow, you won't be able to explain yourself clearly. There's nothing that can't be explained clearly, Hellion Vivian smiled. A straight foot is not afraid of a crooked shoe. Old Man Lu shook his head. Lord Wei, you are still young and don't know the ways of the world. There are some things that can be said to be black even if you are innocent. You are right, Old Man Lu. Beligaju naturally continued the conversation. He curled his lips into a smile, so handsome that even the heavens and earth seemed to lose their beauty. He wiped Hellion Vivian's hand with a handkerchief. There was a hint of mischief in his deep eyes. You have played enough. From now on I, the private advisor, will be in charge of Fuping County's official affairs. You only need to be in charge of diverting water and irrigating the fields. Upon hearing this, the shadow guards who were standing in the dark looked at each other. They thought to themselves, His Highness finally decided to do it himself. This group of people is really too much. Of all people to ostracize, why did they have to ostracize the princess? They will definitely be tortured to death, definitely. Hellion Vivian looked at Beligaju's side profile, and felt that someone was going to be in trouble. She silently looked at the little bald head who was standing beside her. Little 7th Prince's expression was very serious. Third brother, you must take me with you when you beat people up. After that, you can treat me to meat. Hellion Vivian was speechless. I haven't settled the matter of you sneaking out. Beligaju looked at the little one condescendingly and said clearly, Let's have a good talk after dinner. Little 7th Prince did not want to talk to his third brother at all. Every time they talked, he would be forced to dance naked. He could not embarrass himself outside the palace. At the thought of this, Little Bald Head grabbed his trousers and ran to Hellion Vivian with a look that said, Third sister-in-law, please protect me. Hellion Vivian bent down and pinched the child's face. What do you want to eat for dinner? I have already asked around before coming here. Fuping County's jujubes are the best. Little Bald Head said very seriously. The shadow guards who followed him could not help but nod. They could testify that the little master was most concerned about the local specialties throughout the journey. Hellion Vivian could not help but laugh. She said, Jujubes can't be eaten as rice. Let's have some marinated beef, your favorite. Okay. Little 7th Prince had never been a picky eater. He was happy as long as he was given food. He followed behind Hellion Vivian in a dignified manner. Chun Liang and De Xiong were tactful enough to not accompany them. One went to the Lu family to continue protecting Lu Yin, while the other stayed in the field to keep an eye on the situation. Seeing that the night was getting darker, The two adults and one child finished their dinner and wanted to walk to digest the food. The little one was very restrained in front of his third brother. He tugged on Beligaju's sleeve and tried his best to walk with his short legs. Hellion Vivian was mesmerized by his cuteness. She turned to look at him and asked, "Are you tired?" "I'm not tired." Little seventh prince raised his head and looked at his third brother, then at Hellion Vivian. He said, "Third sister-in-law, if you are tired, you can let third brother carry you. There are no outsiders here. You can carry as much as you want." "When did I say that?" Before Hellion Vivian could finish her sentence, Beligaju carried her in his arms. From where Hellion Vivian was standing, she could only see the slight smile on the man's thin lips. His eyes were filled with panic. Stop! Someone wanted to pull the little one over, but found that he couldn't even move a child. So, he simply pulled out a dagger and pressed it against the little one's neck. "If you take another step forward, I'll kill him." Indeed, Beligaju also stopped in his tracks. However, the gaze he used to look at that person was filled with obvious ridicule. With a smile that was not a smile, his good-looking thin lips slightly opened. "Idiot." These two simple words successfully enraged the man holding the dagger. "You don't believe that I'll do it, right? I'll cut him now and show you." As he spoke, the man wanted to raise the dagger. Unexpectedly, as soon as he raised his hand, he was punched hard in the stomach. Bang! That person was sent flying high into the air before crashing heavily onto the ground. Puff! Blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. The man in black couldn't believe his eyes. What did he just see? A 4-year-old child had actually sent his most powerful subordinate flying. In an instant, all the men in black's expressions changed. Their first reaction was to escape, but it was all too late. No one who provoked the royal family could escape unscathed. After a series of crackling sounds were heard, Beligaju leisurely wiped his hands. His left foot stepped on the back of the black-clothed leader's hand. Standing against the light, his expression couldn't be seen clearly, but that pair of long and narrow eyes overflowed with the color of blood. Hellion Vivian walked forward and touched his cold fingers. Beligaju then withdrew his hostility and looked back at her. "What's wrong?" "It's cold." Hellion Vivian smiled faintly and held his hand, interlocking their fingers. Then she instructed the little one, "Little seven, I'll leave these people to you. Let them stand in a line and send them to the Yamen prison. They can be used in the future." Assassinating an official of the imperial court is a crime that Lord Liao can't bear even if he wants to. The little one hummed in agreement and used his foot to pick up a wooden stick. Whoever stood in the wrong place would be in a daze for a long time without any nonsense. The black-clothed leader, whose face was bruised and swollen, dragged his aching arm and vaguely realized that something seemed to have gone wrong. The other party was too different from what they had imagined. Did he really have no background with such good skills? Just as the leader in black was puzzled, Master Liao arrived at Fuping County. He began to complain when he saw Magistrate Liao. He didn't mention a word about how he sent people to trouble Hellion Vivian. "Father, you don't know how arrogant the new county magistrate is. I was having a meal in the provincial capital, but he went to visit me. Not only did he hurt me, but he also asked me to compensate him with a lot of silver." Magistrate Liao had always wanted to mess with Hellion Vivian. Chapter 474. Father, you must make sure that he dies without a burial place. Young Master Liao was so focused on watching his enemy make a fool of himself that he forgot to tell Magistrate Liao that Hellion Vivian and Chan Liang knew each other. Magistrate Liao, who knew nothing, did not know that while he was thinking of ways to get rid of the person in front of him, his son had already created a huge mess for him behind his back. On the other hand, Private Advisor Zhang came to show his loyalty as soon as he heard that young Master Liao was here with money. Magistrate Liao could not be bothered to look at his fawning face. He only asked, What did that Wei fellow do today? I heard that the village is abuzz with news. It's all because of that Wei fellow who did something stupid again. Private Advisor Zhang was in high spirits as he spoke. His face was filled with disdain as he gloated. This person is just too inexperienced. He didn't even take a look at the terrain of Fuping County before thinking of burying a pipe to divert water. What a fool's dream. Magistrate Liao laughed when he heard this. Planting pipes to divert water? Everyone knows that the terrain of the river is lower than the farmland. The water will not flow to higher places. Lord Wei must have lost his mind because of our pressure. I don't think that Wei fellow is that kind. He must have gone crazy from wanting to achieve good results. That's why he came up with such a trick. Private Advisor Zhang chuckled. That's even better. When the people from the provincial capital arrive tomorrow, let's see how that Wei fellow is going to deal with this. Magistrate Liao did not speak anymore. He lowered his head and took a sip of tea. However, the smile on his face was extremely vicious. In the officialdom, this was the best way to get rid of someone completely. Only the people would believe the words of the people. Don't blame him for being ruthless. That Wei fellow should be blamed for thinking too highly of himself. He did not listen to anyone and deserved to die without a burial place. Night fell at the county magistrate's yamen. Bailey Jiaju looked at the letter sent by the shadow guards and the corners of his mouth curved into an arc. This is not enough. Drag the one in the capital down as well. Yes. The shadow guard lowered his eyes respectfully, but he couldn't help but be shocked by his master's means. No one could have imagined that even though Fuping was far away, the situation in the capital city was still under His Highness' control. Fuping's scheme was spreading like wildfire throughout the province, but none of the people involved were aware of the danger. The shadow guard turned back to take a look at his master, only to see Beligaju's slender and transparent fingers holding a black chess piece. With a crisp sound, it landed on the jade chessboard. Sitting behind the scenes and giving pointers to the world was probably referring to this scene. Hellion Vivian was smoking her hair. When Beligaju finished his work and walked in, she was already a little sleepy. Her eyes were closed, and her eyelashes were very long. Beligaju lowered his eyes and looked at her for a while. Then he bent down, picked her up and placed her on the bed. When he let go of her, Hellion Vivian woke up. Beligaju kissed the corner of her eyes and said with a unique magnetic voice, "It's okay. Go back to sleep." Hellion Vivian was still tied up, so when she heard his words she closed her eyes again. Under the moonlight, Beligaju held her in his arms. His figure was slender, and his black hair was scattered around him. He was indescribably gentle. The next day when Hellion Vivian woke up, she saw that noble and flawless face. She wanted to move, but he reached out and pressed her back. Sleep for a while more. Beligaju closed his eyes, and his voice was hoarse, which was not usually there. Hellion Vivian looked outside and said, "No, I have to get up and check on my water pump." With the shadow guards around, no one will dare to come near. Bailey Jiaju knew that this little thing that he was raising would sometimes be restless, so he directly pressed down on her claws and slid his left hand under her clothes. Hellion Vivian's body went soft, and she fell back on his chest. Her ears were a little red, and she bit her thin lips. Her voice was a little shaky. "Not here." After all, the yamen was an important place to handle cases. Someone could come in at any time. Moreover, with her current identity, it was inevitable that someone would come to look for her early in the morning. Beligaju also knew that this place was not right, so he did not really want to do anything to her. After hugging her back, he fell into a light sleep again. The two of them rested for less than half an hour before a servant knocked on the door. "Lord Wei, Lord Wei." Hellion Vivian tidied up her clothes, put on a coat, and opened the door. "What's the matter? Why are you in such a hurry?" The servant hurriedly said, "The people from the provincial capital are here." Magistrate Liao asked all the county magistrates to get up early and gather at Yen Manor. "Go to Yen Manor?" Hellion Vivian's fingers that were tying the coat paused, and the corner of her mouth lifted. "I know. You can leave first." The servant lowered his eyes and said yes. He vaguely saw the figure of Private Advisor Long in the room, and couldn't help muttering, "This Private Advisor Long's relationship with Lord Wei is really good." He came to wait in Lord Wei's room so early in the morning. Baligaju listened calmly. He reached out his hand from behind and took over the work of tying the coat from Hellion Vivian. As a qualified private advisor, this kind of thing should be done by me. The two of them were facing the bronze mirror, and their breaths were right beside her ears. Hellion Vivian only felt numb everywhere, and she couldn't move. If she touched anything, it would definitely delay time. His Highness finally finished tying her coat, and there was a deep smile on his thin lips. Look at your expression. It's as if you're upset. Why didn't you continue? Hellion Vivian. Since when was she upset? His Highness's imagination was too strong, and they were never on the same wavelength. I'll make it up to you when we return to the palace. Baligaju leaned over and kissed her ear, and the tip of his tongue brushed over it intentionally. Hellion Vivian suddenly trembled, and her whole body shrank into his arms like a shrimp that had been electrocuted. Bailey Jiaju curled his lips playfully. Throw yourself into my arms? Hellion Wei looked at his mischievous smile and her heart trembled. The sweetness in her heart swelled even more. Perhaps this was the feeling of liking someone more and more. Even though she knew that this person was shameless to the point of being arrogant, as long as she saw that pair of smiling eyes, she would also smile along with him. After breakfast, several officials from the provincial capital walked into Yen Manor, accompanied by the county magistrates. Magistrate Liao seemed to be showing off his network of connections. Along the way, he was talking and laughing with the officials from the provincial capital. This made the people who supported the road construction see a lot of hope, and they started to talk about it all at once. Lu Rin and Old Man Lu listened attentively, and their eyes fell on Hellion Vivian from afar, and they couldn't help but worry. Magistrate Liao laughed coldly when he heard that. Lord Wei, are you saying that you don't agree with the road being repaired? Have you ever thought about what the people of Fuping County are missing out on because of your hasty decision? As if in response to Magistrate Liao's words, a commotion suddenly came from afar. We want to see Lord Wei. We want to see Lord Wei. Naturally, such a commotion was heard. A few officials from the provincial capital looked at each other and asked the people below with suspicion, "What's going on outside?" "My lords, a few farmers are making a ruckus. They want to see Lord Wei. It seems like they want to question him about something." This was Private Advisor Zhang's reply. The expression on his face made everyone want to know what was going on. Hellion Vivian watched the exchange of glances between him and Magistrate Liao. Her slender fingers tapped on the table, but she did not say anything. One of the officials from the provincial capital spoke. "Let the villagers in. We want to hear what the people want to ask Lord Wei." Yes. Private Advisor Zhang lowered his head and accepted the order. A crafty smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. After a while, he walked in with a few farmers. It was obvious that the people had never seen so many officials before. Their expressions were somewhat fearful. Private Advisor Zhang lowered his voice and spoke in a friendly manner that he had never shown before. "Don't be afraid. Just say whatever you want to say. All of them are from the provincial capital. They will definitely stand up for us." After hearing this, someone mustered up the courage to shout, "I want to see Lord Wei. Where is the new Fuping County magistrate?" The officials from the provincial capital saw that the farmers were so emotional. When they looked at Hellion Vivian again, they had a subtle and probing look. Magistrate Liao lowered his head and took a sip of tea. However, he could not hide the crafty smile at the corner of his mouth. Hellion Vivian was unexpectedly calm. She stood up calmly and said in a calm voice, "I am the new Fuping County magistrate. You are the corrupt official who is stopping us from getting rich?" Before Hellion Vivian could finish her sentence, the young man shouted loudly, "Why didn't you ask Magistrate Liao to build the road? You said that it was for the good of the people by cutting off our opportunity to connect to the provincial capital. However, you are using money to build pipes to divert water. Everyone knows that the water level of the river in Fuping County is lower than the farmland. It is impossible to use this method to irrigate the farmland. It is fine if you are the one who did it, but why did you have to invest the funds for building the road to prevent us from escaping poverty and becoming rich? Wei, you are the most shameless corrupt official I have ever seen. After being scolded, Hellion Wei did not get angry. Instead, she asked in a calm and unsteady voice, "Only a few of us know about the Imperial Court's allocation of funds. Big brother, where did you hear the news?" The man looked at Private Advisor Zhang unconsciously. Private Advisor Zhang coughed loudly. The man said loudly, "Why do you care where I heard it from? You are now trying to stop the road from being built because of your own selfish desires. This is the truth. Lord Wei, you really should give us a proper explanation on this issue." The officials from the provincial capital heard the farmer's words and turned to look at Hellion Vivian. Their faces were stern, which was not seen earlier. The Imperial Court will never tolerate and nurture a traitor. They will use a huge amount of salary to support a corrupt official who is harming the people. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.